Good morning. Welcome on in. 3, 2, 1. Good morning. Welcome on in on this Tuesday morning. LeBron James, man, big story over the weekend, and we got it covered here big time. We're going to go to Philly, let you hear an interview we did with Derek Bodner, who works for Philly Sports back there in Philadelphia. Get his thoughts on the Sixers signing LeBron James. Big news, bombshell news, Derek. What was your first initial impression when you heard the news?
Well, I mean, I think it's what we all do in today's day and age. Make sure that's a real Shams Charania account and that I'm not being played. No, I mean, look, this was one where, like, obviously we've been talking about LeBron for a long time, been waiting for him to make a decision. The Sixers have been on the list, but it always felt like it was a distant third. It just always felt like, familiarity or hometown would eventually win out. And, the Sixers just don't have, outside of, like, Bryce Harper, Philadelphia does not have very many star-level MVP-level athletes that choose to go there. So it was pretty stunning. I think there's a pretty obvious basketball case that you could make, but there's a lot more that goes into a lot of these decisions than just pure basketball. So, yeah, it was absolutely stunning. And it, quite frankly, is still stunning 3 days later.
Oh, man, I can remember you brought that up about Bryce Harper. Now, I live in Utah now, but I was born in North Jersey, and my sister went to Glassboro State, so I spent a lot of time with her. She lived down there at Ocean City in the summers, so I got a lot of Philly in my background. And I can remember when Harper signed. If I remember, it was during spring training. Spring training had already begun, if I remember correctly, and he's a kid that I've actually saw play when he was 12 years old out of Vegas in travel baseball, so I'd followed Bryce Harper and all that stuff. And I remember when he signed, man, I had to get on. I had to listen to Missinelli to go at length. It was such a huge story at that time. I turned on the radio on my phone from back there, and I would imagine that this type. Now, Bryce Harper was entering his prime. He'd already had some good seasons. LeBron is obviously at the end, but in terms of community reaction, you rival the same type of thing there?
Oh, 100%. And look, the Sixers have had two pretty groundbreaking moves in the last month. Look, everybody was absolutely excited and stunned about Jaylen Brown. This one, amazingly, has more people talking. And I say that because, like, Jaylen Brown is in his prime star who could be a building block for 3 to 5 years, possibly even longer, whereas LeBron is obviously, like you said, at the end of the career. So you would expect that the 29-year-old who was just sixth in MVP voting would get a little more fanfare, but this is LeBron James. Everything is different about that. And, yeah, when you talk about the team that was just 2 months ago pretty down in the dumps, a really good win over the Boston Celtics in round one, but then a humiliation against the Knicks in round two, and a team that was being anchored by two relatively old, pretty injury-prone stars. The excitement and the turnaround in that excitement is a sense of whiplash that I was not expecting this summer, but it's definitely reinvigorated and breathed a lot of real excitement into this fan base.
Hi, this is Riley Jensen here. I do disagree a little bit. Maybe you're talking about people that choose Philadelphia, but come on. Saquon Barkley, Terrell Owens, Bryce Harper. I mean, there's been people that have gone to Philadelphia that are big stars, isn't there?
Sure, but Saquon he was a hometown kid. He grew up an hour north of Philly.
Fair enough.
So that's a little bit different. I brought up Bryce. Bryce was maybe the first time in the modern era somebody outside, like an MVP caliber player from the outside chose Philly. So it's something we're still kind of getting used to. But yeah.
So my real question, and I was just pushing back a little bit on you, is Embiid and LeBron, two significant stars. Obviously, Embiid has some significant injury history and mileage, but in terms of managing egos, can these two, can they mesh together? Can they become a team that really pushes for a championship and can put their ego aside?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I think that I probably worry about the egos a little less than just the pure fit on the court. Because obviously LeBron has had a ton of success in the league. Embiid has been an MVP caliber player. If this was earlier in their careers, maybe it would be a little more difficult. But I think Embiid, quite frankly, has been – I think one thing we saw when Tyrese Maxey really started ascending and when they added James Harden, if you are good enough, Embiid is willing to sacrifice touches and to cede control of the offense. And I think he's had such a burden in terms of just creating offense for the team for so long. I think he'll be fine from a mentality standpoint. I do worry a little bit that they're just two players who like to operate pretty much from the same spots on the floor, whether that's, LeBron kind of in that mid post or Embiid, running a lot of pick and roll and mid-range ISO games. You got to worry about that a little bit. It would be great if Embiid can extend his range because he's a lot more comfortable from the mid-range. He'll shoot 50% on 17, 20-foot jumpers, but stepping out to the three-point line, he doesn't like doing at quite the same volume. So I'm a little more worried about the floor spacing, the floor spots they like to operate. I think from a just pure ego perspective, you never really know until you're asked to do so. Like Embiid's very rarely had matching talent around him, so you have to see how it plays out. But I do think probably just the pure mechanical fits concern me a little bit more than just ego.
Derek Bodner joining us. He covers the Sixers for Philly Sports. The Jaylen Brown situation, no one questions his talent, but for whatever, I think the reason, to, at least publicly, he wanted something that he couldn't be in Boston maybe, and soured on the organization. So beautiful trade. I mean, I think you make that 100 out of 100 times for sure. He's only 29 years old, so he still has some good ball ahead of him. Making $57 million. It's an outrageous amounts of money, but that's what these guys make these days. I'm wondering, clearly there had to have been some conversation, so certainly he doesn't pick up his phone and says, oh, we got LeBron. He must have been clued into it, and the baggage there is a little bit, it's not overwhelming concern, but it's a little bit of a concern that now you got all this talent. Who's going to be having the ball the most when it comes down to FGAs? Who's going to have the most? All that stuff. How do you think with him all that messes?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because, like you said, there's a lot of concern over whether or not he wanted to be an equal 1A with Tatum in Boston. He obviously made a lot of comments about how this was, maybe his favorite year of his career, both because I think the implication that he was the leading force of the offense, and also just that they overachieved the way that they did. And now you're in a spot where, like, some nights you might be a third or fourth option. I don't think as an overall season he will be a third or fourth option. I think he will quite possibly be right up there with anyone. But you will have certain nights where you have mismatches to exploit, matchups you want to attack. He might not be getting the role that he is accustomed to. Is he okay with that? And I think it's going to come down to two things. Like, I think a lot of times when you change situations like that, the first year is always the easiest. It's easy to talk yourself into that in a new situation. Like if he was going to be a second or third or fourth option in Boston, it would probably be a little bit tougher of a conversation because he's been there so long. But coming to a new spot, you want to be on your best behavior. So year two, if they win in year one, all of a sudden it's a lot easier in year two to go back into that role. But if they struggle, if they don't meet expectations, if it's clunky at times, that's when I think you start worrying about it. And yeah, I think there's always got to be a concern, especially a guy like Jaylen right now, who's, he's eligible for an extension. I think yesterday was the first day he was eligible for an extension. There'll certainly be a conversation if they don't do anything this summer that they will have next year. You want that Supermax contract. Is this potentially going to get in the way of that? And again, people are willing to sacrifice stuff like that when you're winning and competing for a championship. But if you come up short, that's when I think I start worrying about that.
In the first few days, and I know this is early, has LeBron indicated anything publicly or privately about why Philly specifically was where he chose? And is this a legacy play, a title chase, or something more personal? Do you have any insights into that?
Yeah, well, I certainly think his relationship with Maxey helps. Obviously, Maxey is the highest profile non-LeBron Clutch Sports client, and they have a really strong relationship. They work out together a lot in the offseason and have for the last 6 or so years. So I think that helps. But I think a lot of this is just he feels like Philadelphia is his best chance to compete for a title. He would be, I think, the first player to ever win a title in 4 cities if he does so, and obviously then getting that 5th. I think that's where he's coming from. So no, I don't think it's necessarily like, and winning a title helps with legacy and all that. But I think it's a little bit of Maxey, and Maxey helps you feel both confident in their talent on the floor, but also comfortable in the locker room, and a lot of he just felt like this was the best place to win a title, and whether or not he ends up being true, we will find out in time.
On paper right now, you look at that starting five, and that's really impressive. Throwing Edgecombe, kid we saw play at Baylor here in the Big 12. We like him, NBA body. He had a nice rookie season. You already mentioned Maxey. And then the other three guys, I mean, that can rank right with anybody in the league. How about the bench? What's that going to look like? I know they got Caldwell Pope and Dean Wade, I think were off-season acquisitions. Tell us about what they have as far as filling out the actual rotation.
No, I mean, you started off there with the keys. Anthony Simons they signed for, I think, $6 million. He is an elite off-ball shooter. Doesn't play a lick of defense, but he will help spread the floor for your stars, so I think he will fit in that regard. Dean Wade as a guy who will do a lot of the dirty work, be one of your better, more versatile defenders, and also make just enough shots from the perimeter that hopefully he will spread the floor a little bit as well. And then KCP, a guy who has really had 2 down years shooting, but I think if you look at his overall shot quality, it has dropped over the last 2 years as well. So when he gets next to a real elite creator like LeBron, I think they're hoping that he can make more shots than he has the last few years. But it's on a minimum contract, so you're not too worried if it doesn't work out that way.
Yeah.
And then you got rookie Phylon, who probably has his role reduced a little bit, but I think he has a little bit of ability to create off the dribble that they're excited about. Dominic Barlow, who actually started a lot, more of a defensive-minded forward. And then you got the big man rotation of Adembona and Errol Hook-Forty, which is probably the biggest question mark on the team because Joel Embiid's going to miss 30 games almost by design. So I think that's probably the one area Sixers fans are a little bit concerned about, but they have time. If Hook-Forty and Bona don't work out, that'll probably be an area you see them pursue at the trade deadline.
All right, there you go. Now we're going to get our guy, our favorite national guy, Brian Geltzeiler, SiriusXM Radio and NBAtb. Hear what he has to say. That's coming up next. Thanks for joining us, DJ and PK. DJ is off. Mental health performance coach and former quarterback Riley Jensen sitting in right now. We're going to the scene, close to the scene anyway, of the big news. Brian Geltzeiler, SiriusXM NBA radio host and NBAtb contributor. The news broke the other day on LeBron James making his decision, and he's going to Philly, not too far from where my guy Brian is, just about a couple hours away. Brian, what was your first initial reaction when you heard the news?
Hey, it's pretty awesome. I love the choice that he made. I think it's great for the league. I think it's great for LeBron. It's obviously great for the Sixers. I think he just made a super, super decision. It's a team that is got a couple question marks, but by the same token, his presence answers a big chunk of those question marks. And I think he was thoughtful about it. He took his time, which I know a lot of people in the media were unhappy with. I was not one of them. He had earned the right to take as much time as he wanted to. And the fact that 41 years old, that he still has the gravitas to hold up the league's transaction cycle, I don't think that should have factored into his decision. He doesn't have a responsibility to everybody else to make a decision on his future faster than he's ready to. I just think everything about this decision, I think, is good for the league, good for the Sixers, good for LeBron James. This is a really, really cool choice. It's a little bit outside the box, and I think the Sixers are not only going to be a whole lot of fun to watch, but they're going to be a fantastic team this year.
Yeah, for me, I always look who are the two finalists, because if you don't get to the final, there's no point in worrying about if you can win the title, right? You got to get to the final in order to win the title. So I'm focused on the East, and I'm wondering your perspective as far as where they fit in. For me, as long as Embiid, and that's an if, I get it, if he can have any form of health when we get to the postseason, I like their chances to come out of the East, certainly as much as anybody else's.
So I do too. I think the East I had the Knicks on a separate tier than everybody before this, and now I have the Sixers on that same tier with them. Now, here's what I'll say, and this is one of the reasons I do give the Sixers a decent chance to come out of the East. It is really hard in this era of NBA basketball to repeat as champion, let alone repeat as a finals contestant, let alone repeat as champion. We've seen last 8 years, different champions each and every year. Many years, there's just been different teams that go to the finals year in and year out. Like, are we having teams that are repeating in the finals? We really haven't. at all. And I think that's even look at the Celtics lost in the finals 22, weren't there at 23, won the championship in 24, nowhere to be found in 25 or 26. Like you look up and down the line with teams going to the finals. Oklahoma City wins it in 25, can't make the finals in 26. So the odds of the Knicks going back are against the Knicks. The Knicks, one thing with the Knicks, they've been blessed for the most part with fantastic health the last 2 years in the playoffs. Now, this year, to be fair, OG Anunoby did strain a hamstring in the first round. They had Mitchell Robinson break a knuckle before the finals. But because they took care of their business and didn't play with their food, they were able to have enormous one-week rest periods, 2 of them in the NBA playoffs, which is unheard of, which allowed those guys the benefit to get themselves healthy enough to play. With all that said, they've still been blessed with great health. Here's the thing I look at with Philly. Listen, Embiid helps, don't get me wrong. Embiid also hurts in some ways, too. When you look at how Jalen Brunson destroyed Joel Embiid in a 4-game sweep last year in the second round, they just brought – it was a simple formula for the Knicks. Embiid's on the floor, bring his man to the ball on the screen, get him switched on to Brunson and go. And that was an easy thing to do. Here's what I love about this Philly team. There is a version of them without Embiid that's very, very good and plays an up-tempo game and gets a lot of easy baskets. You're going to see a lot of LeBron at 5 with Dean Wade at the 4. Keep in mind, there's only a certain amount of these dominant centers in the NBA that you need a really big guy like Joel Embiid to match up against. Now, again, to be fair, one of them is Karl Anthony Towns with the Knicks. But if you look up and down the Eastern Conference, there's not many of them in the East, okay? And there's a couple of them in the West, Jokic, Wemby, but you don't have these enormous big centers. Here's my point. Getting away with LeBron at the 5 for some big chunks of time for the Sixers is actually going to be a decent hiding place for him on some of these lesser centers. So I look at Philly and feel like even with the uncertainty of Embiid, they are formidable regardless.
From your national vantage point, how does the league's locker rooms and front offices view Philly's gamble on 40-plus LeBron? Are rival execs and players reading this as a real title threat or like a legacy farewell tour?
Oh, no, a real title threat, Riley. This is, LeBron made this decision, and it's interesting because we were all prognosticating and predicting in the weeks that we were waiting for LeBron to make this choice. And when we, and the big thing is, the criteria in each of these finalists was different, right? If he wanted to truly be close to home, the Warriors would have been the right choice. If he was interested in a really significant, top of the roster type of role to try and compete, Miami was the place to go. If there was a sentimentality of trying to bring another title back to his home area of Northeast Ohio and Cleveland, that sentimentality, if he prioritized that, would have brought him there. If he was just prioritizing a basketball fit, okay, regardless of money, which he made clear money had nothing to do with it, Philly was the best choice. And I think the people I've talked to around the league are all feel the same way. Oh, my God, is Philly really good now? And the thing about Philly being really good, and I think it's really important to understand this, Embiid can play 40 games and LeBron can play 50, and as long as they're both healthy at the right time, Philly's dangerous. Because Philly is going to be a top 4 team in the conference regardless. Why? Because, first of all, they brought Jaylen Brown in. He is a regular season wins monster. Just look at his career. Okay, the last 10 years, I don't know that you'll find a player in the NBA that's won more regular season games than Jaylen Brown. That's what he does. Then you look at Tyrese Maxey, who was one of the leaders in the league last year in minutes per game. His style of play will win you a lot of regular season games. Here's my point. The Sixers have this luxury right now of not having to run Embiid on back-to-backs, okay? LeBron may have a couple of 3 or 4 game vacations over the course of the season to keep him fresh. They can worry about keeping those guys fresh and still win so many regular season games with this Brown, Maxey, Edgecombe core and the other pieces that they have. So I think Philly here, you look around the league and everybody kind of feels the same way, that the Sixers are have an opportunity to put their stamp on the championship picture in this coming season.
That familiar voice you hear is Brian Geltzeiler. You can hear him on NBA radio and see him on NBA TV. We see a lot of teams have a clear pecking order. Obviously, with the Knicks, it was Brunson, and then they go from there. Towns was involved, but they knew where the ball was going most of the time, and then those types of players decide what they're going to do, whether shoot, pass, whatever. The Sixers, You got the Jaylen Brown thing talking about how this was his most fun year, I guess it was, which leads you to believe, well, he didn't like playing with Tatum, whatever it might be. How do you think all the pieces fit together as far as that pecking order with the Sixers?
So the first thing you'll hear people say is, well, who's going to sacrifice? That's easy. LeBron's going to sacrifice. LeBron is not a guy that's coming to this game and feels like he needs 20 shots a game. And don't get me wrong, if 20 shots a game is going to be what helps them win games, he'll take them. But that's not a requirement coming in. So we know right there LeBron's going to sacrifice. Here's the other thing that I think gets overlooked from the, only one basketball crowd when they look at what's happening here with the Sixers. Joel Embiid turned this thing over to Therese Maxey last year. Embiid walked into that team with the understanding Maxey is our best player. This all runs through him. So the fact that it's Jaylen Brown there now, the fact that they got to work with LeBron, Joel Embiid at this stage of his career, he's won an MVP. He struggles to stay healthy, but what he has to prove is in the postseason. And to prove that in the postseason, it doesn't necessarily mean he's got to go out and get 40 and 20. He's got to win games. So the point being is if being deferential, and Embiid we have seen can be a very unselfish player when he wants to be. If being deferential offensively is going to be what's best for the team, I don't have any doubt in my mind that Joel Embiid's going to do that. I think he's prepared to do that. The thing is this, and this is so important to understand, this took a lot of time. Therese Maxey is a Clutch Sports client that LeBron has a prior relationship with. Right. Therese Maxey was all on board with this, okay? LeBron has a relationship with Joel Embiid. They played together in 2024 in the Olympics in Paris, okay? Those guys, it's been reported in multiple places, were in plenty of touch. Embiid told him he wanted them. And you know what? I know there's talk Jaylen Brown made a comment about Bronny a couple of years ago. Jaylen Brown and LeBron have had contact. Jaylen Brown wants LeBron James there. Jaylen Brown would like nothing more, okay, to stick it to the Boston Celtics because he doesn't like how they handled things on the way out at all at the end of last season. So the fact that Brown, there was always talk Brown wants his own team. What Brown wants to do is stick it to the Celtics more than anything else, and now he's got his chance. And again, I also go back to this, guys. So much of this was about the New York Knicks. Because we heard Rich Paul say this a week before LeBron's announcement. We heard Rich Paul on his Game Over podcast on Ringer and Spotify podcast network. We heard him say, if the Knicks did not win the title, LeBron was going to New York. Okay, so what happens? What's the next best thing if you can't help the Knicks win their first title in 53 years? Go to Philadelphia and help them knock off the Knicks and let them win their first title in the last 44 years. So that's a lot. So much of this was about what the Knicks accomplished, the Knicks achieved, and what they represent in the Eastern Conference.
You've been able to observe relationships and team culture across locker rooms for years. If you were, coaching LeBron through this situation, these first few days in Philly, these first months in Philly, what would be your coaching style or philosophy for him? What would you tell him would be what's really needed for these guys that are on this team right now?
So let me, Roddy, am I putting my LeBron advisor hat on, or am I putting my Nick Nurse hat on?
LeBron James. Let's go LeBron James.
LeBron James advisor. Let's go.
Yeah.
So listen, I would. There's not a lot at this stage of LeBron James's career and his life that you have to tell him regarding this. LeBron is walking into this knowing that he is going to be connective tissue. And ultimately what I would say to LeBron is that your best posture in this group is the exact same posture you had for the month of March with Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves, where you picked your spots, deferred to those guys, and watched a team that had the best month any team had in an NBA season this year. That's what I would want to bottle for LeBron coming here. And by the way, I don't know that anybody needs to say that to LeBron. I think LeBron picked this team for that exact reason, because that's when LeBron was having his most fun this year. And yes, we heard Rich Paul say this the other day with Max Kellerman on his podcast. He said that LeBron beating the Rockets with a compromised Austin Reeves and no Luka Doncic in the first round was part of what fueled him wanting to come back and do this again, because he saw come postseason, he's got enough left to slay some dragons. And if he has the right people around him, he can absolutely do that. So I think there's if LeBron maintains that posture he had in terms of how he works with teammates, I think that's a no-brainer fit for them. With all of that said, I don't think if he wasn't planning on doing that, this would not have been the place he picked.
Switching gears a little bit, you comfortable with the Jazz not matching Kessler?
Oh, 100%. I mean, listen, you offered this guy 5 years and $140 million. You offered him $28 million a year. Played 5 games last year.
Yeah.
5 games. Okay? So you now turned around and you were able to get, without having to take a salary back, you were able to bring in 2 first-round picks, 2 unprotected first-round picks. This was a no-brainer deal for the Jazz. Listen, I like Walker Kessler. He's got to prove he can stay healthy. And he may be a clunky fit with this group, with having Markkanen and Jaren Jackson. And you know what? They're going to experiment. This is where Danny Ainge and Austin Ainge and Justin Zanuck are so smart. They're going to experiment with the whole Jaren Jackson at 4, Markkanen at 3, with Nurkic at 5. And what's Nurkic on? 2 years, $22 million. Essentially a disposable contract you can get rid of if that experiment doesn't work. You are not going to have that with Walker Kessler. Listen, this 4-year, $130 million deal, okay, this may be, outside of the Gary Trent deal, this may be untradeable by the Lakers early on, really. Like, it's for a guy that has not played all that much in the last 2 years, this is an absurd deal that the Lakers got played on, in my opinion. Because why? Because Luka Doncic wanted Walker Kessler there. And Utah absolutely took advantage of bidding him up, made a very smart decision not to match that deal. Listen, right now, the Jazz are at the point where there's a lot of teams out there, not all the teams, but a lot of teams out there that are playing checkers, okay? The Ainges and Justin Zanuck are playing chess.
How about OKC? Now, they had to get rid of some peripheral guys, but they didn't seem to have to get rid of the absolute core guys. And I realize Dort did start. But the core guys, to me, are still there, and they've got some younger guys that they want to give some time to. So I don't necessarily see them, if they don't have the injury issue, taking a huge step back.
Oh, I think regular season-wise, they're not going to take a huge step back. I think they're going to be an absolute regular season monster with all of that depth. Here's my issue with them, and this is where the loss of Dort hurts them. They have a size problem on the perimeter. They have a size problem on the perimeter in a conference final against San Antonio. And if they would go to an NBA final, and let's assume it's, the Knicks, they'd have a size problem there too. And the thing is, Dort was only about 6'3", 6'4". Dort is a friggin' linebacker, man. Yeah. The dude is as strong as the day is long, and that's a piece that they can't replace. Listen, Alex Caruso is an excellent defensive player. He will do a really nice job. Cason Wallace is an excellent defensive player. Alex Caruso is 6'4", and he's 175 pounds soaking wet. Cason Wallace is an excellent player that's got a lot of upside and a really good defensive player, especially on small guards. But you're going to put Cason Wallace and have him spend a lot of time on Kevin Durant. Yeah, you're going to have him spend, he's going to be your main Dylan Harper defender. You kind of look at where they are size-wise on the perimeter and who they have to match up with, and you don't necessarily love it. With all that said, the bringing back Isaiah Hartenstein, shoring themselves up with bigs in the draft with the kid Mara from Michigan, and they really like this kid from Georgetown last year, Sorber, that didn't play this year. What I do think you are going to see from them to counteract some of this perimeter size issues is they're going to play the majority of their minutes with 2 bigs on the floor. Chet Holmgren's going to be a 4 on this team. He's not going to play a lot of 5. And I think that's something that they're going after here to see if they can match up a little better with San Antonio, because I think one of the reasons they lost that San Antonio series had to do with the fact that they played small too frequently.
That was Brian Geltzeiler thinking about LeBron James and what he thinks of the Jazz not re-signing Kessler. He liked it, obviously. All right, coming up next, we're going to go heavy on football this morning. We're going to talk BYU and Utah football. What are some of their issues? Stay with us right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome on in on this Tuesday morning. DJ and PK, Soccer Boy is off today. We're going heavy on football. We got the football guys. We got me, Jake Hatch, and later on, Mitch Harper and Steve Bartle will come in for an hour apiece, talking obviously Utah football and BYU football. They are our KSL insiders for both of those sports. They do a great job. And Jake, this morning, right now, before the 7 o'clock hour. Issues for BYU and Utah. Let's start first with BYU. They got a lot of stuff that's coming back. They got some issues at receiver. I think that's the number one issue from the offensive perspective. What are we thinking? Now, we know we got JoJo Phillips, but we've been waiting. Now's his time. Can he be a big-time receiver?
Well, that's the question that you pose right there, is that if JoJo is capable of being what everybody thinks he is, they're going to be fine. They'll have a true number one wide receiver. But remember, last year, he got off to a good start, breaks his collarbone, misses the entire rest of the regular season, then comes back for the bowl game, had a really good bowl game. Aaron Roderick, throughout spring camp, and everybody I talked to down there, and everybody that would say anything on the record, was raving about Kyler Casper. Now, this is a guy who's a 4-star prospect out of Arizona, has had multiple season-ending foot injuries at Oregon.
Yeah.
He claims they're in the past. If that is indeed the case, they will have two guys, one in JoJo Phillips who stands 6'5", and Kyler Casper is a legit 6'6".
Yeah.
So they could have twin towers at the outside wide receiver spots. That could be really, really nice for them to have, but it is a major question that has to be answered at wide receiver.
And then who's a slot guy? I mean, Parker Kingston was really, really good.
It's probably going to be Legend Glasker. He's the cousin of Isaiah Glasker. Now, I interviewed him last fall, PK, at a Lehigh High School football game, and he told me during that interview, on the record, he volunteered. He said, "Hey, I actually almost went to BYU this year. I was supposed to graduate in the summer and enroll at BYU this fall. The coaches wanted me there to play. They think really highly of his talent. He's actually bigger than Glasker height-wise, weight-wise are probably similar, but he's got the same type of game-changing speed, and they think, at least in my mind, he's probably the most likely option to step in.
You said Glasker, you mean Kingston?
Well, he's the same size, like he's taller than Kingston, is what I'm saying.
Right.
So same weight probably overall, but got the same type of speed that Kingston had, and he can be a game breaker, they hope.
Well, they're going to need that, obviously. Expect them to be able to throw the ball with more proficiency, although Bear obviously had a great season for a freshman. But we say as a freshman, so that means that we're expecting more as a sophomore. And I know Aaron Roderick, before the Retzlaff situation, had high standards for Retzlaff coming back for his senior year because he had played exclusively heavily as a junior pretty much the whole season. I don't think he missed any time there. No. And so now they're looking at Bear, same type of deal where he played the whole season. And now it's his second year, but for Retzlaff, it was his second year, even though he played junior college. Bear didn't, so he's a sophomore and, the true sophomore. So I don't know if I can expect a whole lot more, but I do expect more. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely. Why wouldn't it be? He produced 3,500 total yards of offense last year, PK. He is one of 7 quarterbacks, if I recall correctly, at the Power 4 level who produced that amount of yards as a true freshman quarterback. And I believe 3 or 4 of those guys of that group went on to be either Heisman Trophy winners or Heisman Trophy finalists. It's a pretty eclectic bunch of guys.
So you're saying Bear is rare?
Well, sure, yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, no, you're right. But I think that you can expect more. If he can push that to maybe, let's say, 4,000 total yards, he's going to be, I think, just fine. The added caveat to all that is LJ Martin. He was the engine that made everything go last year. He's the reigning offensive player of the year in the conference. Right. He was named the preseason offensive player of the year, and by his own acknowledgement, he understands he's got a lot of things riding on him, and he's ready to shoulder that load.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing as if he stays healthy, knock on wood, for draft positioning, essentially.
And to become the all-time leading rusher in BYU history.
Yeah, and there's no reason why he can't be. Yeah. The offensive line looks good enough. Looks like they'll be fine there. They've got enough vets returning.
They like it. They like that group.
Yeah, so they should be okay. If the receivers come through, then it looks like their offense is going to be fine. And they're very excited about tight ends.
Yeah.
I know they've got at least 2
Lyons and Saliapaga
that they think that can make differences. And, we've heard about Lyons and Saliapaga. He's from Oregon too, right?
Yeah, so he's an Oregon transfer. He's originally an Orem High School product, but went up to Oregon. His older brother played at BYU. That was the family tie. Yeah,
so I'm expecting big things, and hopefully the health is their way, and there should be no reason why they can't do what they're expected to do. Defensively, Jack Kelly. But Ulavale, the Cal transfer, another local kid who's coming home. Now, he's only got one season, right?
Yeah.
He's capable, and we know Glasgow is really good, and then there's 3 or 4 others that there's got to be at all times a Kafusi in there somewhere.
There's 2, actually. Micah, who, by the way, I think it's Micah, who looks like the spitting image of a linebacker version of Bronson Kafusi. Yeah. I'm telling you, I'll show you the picture, PK. You'll laugh because it looks exactly like Bronson, but they also got Ace Kafusi, his cousin.
Right.
But I think if you want a question for BYU's defense, they've got 2 elite corners, and Evan Johnson, Shmev as they call him, and Trey Alexander. Those 2 are very, very good. They're all Big 12 caliber guys. Behind them, though, PK, it's one journeyman guy in Travion Williams. Is it Travion Williams? I've heard the young man's name who's coming from Mississippi State.
Yeah.
I don't think that's his right name, but apologies. They have one guy coming in from Mississippi State and then a bunch of youngsters.
Right.
So the depth at corner, if those 2 hold up, they're going to be just fine. The question is, are they going to be playing exclusively just those 2 guys at corner? That's not been the style they have played previously in this defense. They've usually rotated 3 or 4 corners throughout games. They've got to have some of these young guys step up at that spot.
Mm-hmm. And then safeties, we've got Satawal and Damuni.
Yes, those 2, and they're expected to be just fine. Tommy Prassis, who's got a lot of experience as well. Back, yeah.
He had some. Did he play at all last year?
He did. He played. Yeah. Remember, he played that nickelback spot for a while there before he got injured.
Right.
But he's got experience, and they think their safety spot. Tanner Wall was really, really good. He's all Big 12 first team. I got no problem saying great story. Walk on, who became an all Big 12 performer. But they have got 3, 4, 5 guys at that safety spot. They're very confident in.
Mm-hmm. And then up front, maybe. Mm-hmm. Well, we're expecting Tunavasa to be a little more. What's the word? A bigger contributor, maybe.
Well, yeah, Justin Kirkland is his compatriot, and they both have said, PK, they think they can be the best tandem of defensive tackles in the Big 12.
And Kirkland, he played some, got injured.
He's played at Oklahoma State, started at Utah Tech, and he had a knee injury. He showed up in camp last year. His knee just never really was 100%. So they played him in the 4 games they could play him in.
Right.
Redshirted him. He has declared himself fully healthy. The coaches think he's fully healthy. The other thing on the defensive line is they got a lot of young defensive ends. Remember, Nusi Talmoya-Peau last year was a nice revelation. He's the kid from Westlake, a Stanford guy that opted not to go to Stanford after the whole Troy Taylor situation went down. They got to have a pass rush. You talk about Jack Kelly. He had 10 sacks a year ago. He was the first player in Kalani Sitake's decade-long tenure to have double-digit sacks in a season. That's crazy to consider, but it was true. Yeah. They got to replace that. Those defensive ends, Tausilia Khan, Talmoya-Peau, Clegg.
Back a second year.
Bodie Schoonover, those guys have to step up.
I like all those guys. I think they have that opportunity to be as effective as they've been.
Yeah.
We'll see, if the Jay Hill loss is big.
Yeah.
But you've still got guys coaching. Kelly Papinga will be a first year, but he's been coaching now for 15 years. Mm-hmm. And the guys up front, Gary Anderson's still around, so they've got enough guys from the coaching perspective that have experience. So I suspect they'll be fine, which is why they're some regards are the favorite to win the Big 12. I'd still go with Texas Tech myself until I see otherwise, but BYU, if they have a rematch in the conference final, I'm not going to be surprised.
Well, they're in prove-it mode here, PK. They've got to go out there, and they want to play in the college football playoff. You know what that's going to take?
That should be the goal, yeah.
You got to win the Big 12 title, or you have to knock off the likes of a Notre Dame at home.
If you beat Notre Dame, then doors can open.
Yeah.
So we'll see. All right, switching over to Utah. Obviously, a lot of change, but also, too, not as much change as I think we want to think there is, actually. I mean, we'll start with the offense. I mean, they only retain one coach in Atawaya, but they retain the running back in Parker. Devin Dampier, if he plays like he did against Nebraska and stays healthy, they are extremely dangerous. Mm-hmm. Now, I keep hearing, and we'll get it with Steve Bartle will be joining us later in the 9 o'clock hour, these receivers. And Morgan talked about it down in Texas a couple weeks back, that he thinks this group, I hate to say it because we've been hearing it, could be the best they've been, but man, we've cried wolf a little bit about their receivers to where I'm skeptical.
Well, I don't mean to laugh, but you're right. This has been a decade, almost 2 decades of, hey, this is our best wide receiver group to date. And it's like, okay, what are they going to produce? But I really like Braden Pagan, for example.
I mean, he's got a resume.
Yeah, he does. So I want to believe you're right that they are being sincere when they say this, but those wide receivers, you talk about like a prove-it mode for BYU. Both these wide receiver groups at both of these schools have got to step up this year because they've got to help their quarterback out in terms of getting themselves open and making it easier on that quarterback. But you're right. If Devin Dampier plays to the level we have seen from him, the Nebraska game, I even think early on last season, before some of those injuries kind of accumulated on him, he was super dynamic.
I'm expecting big things. I think he is a player of the year caliber in the Big 12.
I agree. Yeah.
If he plays all 12 and he's healthy, and he's a charismatic kid. Mm-hmm. People rally around him, and I think he wants to show a little bit. No offense for Jason Beck, but it was more me than him.
Well, yeah.
Now he's got that chance to show it because Jason's obviously over in Michigan.
Correct. The guy who brought him to Utah that he had featured in this offense, because some people I think will tell you that Devin Dampier is a system quarterback. He's a product of the system that Jason Beck does on offense because he produced at New Mexico under Jason, produced at Utah under Jason. Well, now with Kevin McGiven taking over, you're right. It's his opportunity to say, I can play in any system here.
Right. And he wants to play in the NFL.
He does.
They all do.
Yeah.
So see what he can do here. Up front, obviously they lose two studs on the offensive line.
All 5 starters are turned over.
I think they've had enough guys who've gotten experience, and they showed it a little bit. I can remember talking to Mark Harlan at Allegiant Stadium before the game with Utah on the offensive line. He said this is a good opportunity for these guys to show what they can do, and they did.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about this is, they're turning over all 5 starters, but the cupboards aren't bare at that position because Jim Harding did a really good job of stalking talent because it seemed like every time there would be one guy who went down, Jim Harding would just say, hey, I'm going to plug and play this guy, and it worked out.
Right.
Now, will that work without him there? That, I think, is the question that remains, PK, is there's talent there. How quickly can they get integrated? But I thought that the look that you got against Nebraska in Las Vegas showed a lot of what they have on that O-line, even though, none of them were a full-time starter this time last year.
And they've got this big 5-star coming down with Jordan Gross from Idaho, right?
With Jordan Gross,
5-star, man.
Yep.
Offensive line. Spencer Fano was that, and he started day one.
Well, I was going to say, his own coach, Jordan Gross, knows something about playing from the very get-go.
Yeah. Gross obviously was an NFL guy himself under Ronnie Mack coming back now. And so I'm excited to see what they can do offensively. I think the key is keeping Devin Dampier healthy. If Devin Dampier is healthy, they should be fine. Defensively, and they have just been plug and play at the defensive line for years now. Years, literally years.
But here's the problem. It was slipping the last 2 years. It has slipped, PK. I know this is going to come off bad, but I'm telling you, that is my chief concern for Utah defensively, is that defensive line has major question marks about it. I would love for guys like Carson Kaufusi, et cetera, to shut me up.
They've been talking about him a lot.
But they have got, you talk about groups that need to show that they are plug-and-play type guys. It's got to happen along the defensive line. I love
and also obviously the BYU kid is at Michigan. Henry Daly.
Yeah, John Henry Daly. Yeah, their leading sack artist. He's off to Michigan, and so they have got a lot of bodies there on the defensive line. I like to use the term a lot. There's a ton of potential there, but it's got to turn into production.
Yeah, and the thing about it is they over the years have had some big time studs.
Absolutely,
do they have big time studs?
That's the question that needs to be answered because you're right. For so many years, it was plug and play. You may not know their name, PK, but it felt like every year some guy was going to step into defensive tackle or defensive end and produce it at an elite level for Utah because that's just the way that the Whittingham system had worked. I've seen from my vantage point, it's slipping the last 2 years. It's not that it's been awful, but it's slipped to a level that I think that this year's unit, they should feel disrespected, and they need to go out there and shut everybody up with the way that they play.
Yeah. Excited to see if they have a stud.
Yeah.
Because they've had studs.
Yeah.
And Henry Daly, the most recent example. Tonavasa was very good. I can go down the list. I would need a program to remember all the guys. So see what they got there. It seems like since Startu Lele played mid last decade, every year they've had some all-conference candidates. Whether they have them this year
remains
to be seen.
The Nate Orchards. They've had elite players, and it's been a conveyor belt. Mm-hmm. I think there are bodies there, but the potential says it's got to come through.
Right. Linebacker, losing some talent there. Probably to the NFL. We'll see how that plays out with those guys trying to make teams now that camp is underway. But they do have some experience there, and they got a guy coming back who was injured.
Demooney? Levani Demooney?
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, Levani Demooney, talk about a guy who can ball.
Right.
He's kind of been forgotten because the whole thing out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
Like when you get injured, you disappear off the radar for people.
Right.
If he's back and he's back to what he was, you're gonna have at least one pillar to build around.
Yeah. And they're talking about that.
Yeah.
And Reynolds has played some. So they've got some guys there. I'm wondering who are going to be the studs in the defensive backfield.
Well,
because they've had a number of guys, right, that go on right to the NFL.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, I think we'll see some new faces there. I know Nate Ritchie's got some experience back there, and they've got some other guys that have been able to play. So I think they should be okay. I think they should be okay defensively. They're going to need to be because there's some very good offenses. It seems like the Big 12 has some really good offenses.
And they're spread too. They will spread you out. So, okay, if there are two guys on the staff, PK, that I trust that their units are going to hold up, and if not outright excel, it's at safety and at cornerback, because you have Morgan Scalley, and now there's going to obviously he's the head coach now, so it's taking him away from his day-to-day responsibilities from being the safeties coach, but he will still instill in these guys, hey, this is the level you're expected to play to. And then at cornerback, I trust what they've always produced. It's kind of what the defensive line conversation we just had. They seem to find somebody all the time, and I expect that those positions will excel, even if you don't know the names outside of maybe a Nate Ritchie, for example, that you're like, oh, I recognize that guy.
Yeah.
By the way, one name to file away. I don't know if he may play a little bit this year. I think 2027 and beyond, though, is his time to shine. Davis Andrews. He's another local product. He's an American Fork High School grad. I am super excited for his potential. I watched him in high school. I called high school games with him. He was dominant at safety. He looks the part, of a Nate Ritchie, of a Morgan Scalley himself. Some of these elite safeties that Utah has had in the past. If he's back and in shape, there's no reason to think that he can't contribute this year. But
being from mission?
He's coming off of a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But that'll be interesting to see how much he can contribute this year, even if I think 2027 is really his time to step into the forefront.
All right, there you go, man. That's what we'll be hitting this morning. Stay with us. We got college football. It's right around the corner. Camps open in less than a week. BYU is going to have a little bit of media availability on Thursday. We'll be down there in conjunction with a golf tournament that they put on for the media, so we'll have you covered. So keep it all right here. Coming up next, what's trending on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
It's time to get your morning started with the news you need to know.
News update.
This is what's trending with DJ and PK. Hashtag NFL.
I went back, and as I always do this off season, I read some John Wooden, and one of the early things was that everything he says is so poignant. It's like you read his book and you highlight everything, and one of them was, don't lose sleep worrying about your competition, let them lose sleep worrying about you. Funny story, I was sharing that with Kyle right about when Myles Garrett joined the Rams, and he was going, man, that's really cool. And as we were speaking, that came out, and Kyle said, you know what, F John Wooden. So.
Kyle Shanahan said, you know what, John Wooden? No, and no. What's next? Bleep Vin Scully? You don't stand for the flag being raised anymore? There's certain things you don't do. And one of those is not you bleep John Wooden. No. That is John Lynch. What's his GM of the San Francisco 49ers?
Correct.
Yeah. That Kyle Shanahan story has a lot of layers to it. We'll see how that develops. And guys saying ESPN holding the story. That's not journalism. Journalism as we knew it. As the journalism I knew. I've got no problem saying it, and I grew up in the biz. 23 years, daily newspapers, ink stained, and all that stuff. Doesn't exist anymore. Nope. It doesn't, and that's a shame. Doesn't mean it's completely eliminated, but it doesn't exist in the manner that it did when I was doing it, and I'm an old timer now. Oh, man, I'll tell you. Tampa Bay Buccaneers Pro Bowl defensive tackle Vita Vea. Now, he went to Washington State, didn't he?
Washington, I believe.
Washington?
Yeah.
Okay. He's requested a trade after the talks on a contract extension have stalled and reportedly have expressed some desire to return to his hometown in California. NorCal.
He grew up in the Bay Area. Apparently went to high school 6 miles from where the Niners play.
Does he have injury issues? Because if you grew up where the Niners play, they got that power plant there or something, right?
Yeah, that'll be exacerbated by the power surges, apparently.
I've covered 3 games in that stadium. I think that explains it.
All the weirdness?
Yeah, for me. Yeah. The Utes played the bowl game there, and then 2 times they played the Pac-12 title game there. Went 0 for 2. They're 0 for 2 in Northern California and 2 for 2 in Las Vegas. And they'll never play a Pac-12 title game again. Not that they won't be good enough. Doesn't seem like they'll be that. And I agree with what Kyle Shanahan said. DJ always says that. Well, how are they going to match up with them? Well, screw that. How are they going to match up with us? You have to have the aggressive mindset. I agree on that one. And this is a bizarre story. Chiefs OC Eric Bieniemy. His wife was shot by their son, allegedly, Sunday evening, and she's in stable condition. Elijah Bieniemy has been charged with 3 felony counts in the incident. That's just awful, man. Horrible news. Obviously, EB, as they call him in KC, is going to be away from the team. Indiana Colts QB, Indianapolis, I guess I should say, not Indiana. Daniel Jones, he's declared himself 100% healthy. That's great after he comes off a torn Achilles. He'd been fully cleared to participate in the training camp. And he's the Colts' starting quarterback. Yeah, way to go. That's great news. Get yourself healthy, ready to go. 3-time Pro Bowler safety linebacker Jamal Adams. He's going to join the Vikings for his 10th season. He had been playing linebacker the last few seasons, playing 448 snaps there for Las Vegas. Daniel Jones, can he be one of those quarterbacks that it just took a while and you needed a team or two to go through? Now, obviously, he's on his second one. He was with the Giants as a high pick. And, you know, that they didn't win. Let him go. And he goes over to the Colts in Indianapolis. And he was rocking. Beat out, what's that Florida kid's name? Richardson?
Anthony Richardson, yeah.
Yeah, who I saw play in person when the Utes went down there and thought he was a great athlete, but didn't believe in him as a quarterback. And I think I may have got one right for a change. And DJ Daniel Jones taking off. You know, we saw that. Go ahead.
It's the storyline with like Sam Darnold, for
That's
example.
where I was going.
Yeah, like I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And that, if you want to bring it closer to home, Jay Drew recently interviewed Zach Wilson, and Zach's kind of looking for that same opportunity.
Did you read my mind?
Sorry.
Did you read my mind?
I've worked with you for long enough.
That's where I was going, yeah. Zach did some autograph signing or something, and Jay must have gone down there, Utah County, and he did. And I read the story posted yesterday, I believe. And they're going to have a couple of more stories that he's going to do there. And yeah, you know, I don't know if that can happen for Zach. I'd love to see it. A local kid do well. Obviously, the Jets, 3 years, it was bad, batter, and baddest. And so now he's on his what? He went to Broncos, Miami. What is this, 15?
Denver, yeah, this is his 5th team.
Yeah, and he's got to compete for the backup job there with our guy, Kellen Moore, as the head coach.
It'll be him and Spencer Rattler competing to back up Shuck.
Shuck, yeah. Kid, 2 Phoenix kids, Rattler and Shuck there. And obviously Zach from over here in our area. We'll see what happens. I mean, you got to make the team first. It's a bizarre situation. You know, John Beck has talked about that, going to situations that aren't good and you get yourself in there. He was with Miami when Miami stunk, and I don't know if Zach has lost confidence and whatever it might be and questions how good he can be. But he's still in the league right now, and, they've got another quarterback there. I don't remember his name. Jay had it in the story. You can go look at it at Deseret News as far as that goes. So he'll have to make the team. I think he would be able to make it. We'll see how that plays out. But, he hasn't played a lot. But you never know with these quarterbacks. I was thinking about this the other day. The one that really has baffled my mind the most in recent years, who didn't really make it, big-time college quarterback. Yak is running through big-time college quarterbacks who didn't really make it.
I'm curious, who do you got?
Come on, I can't give it up that easily. You're an NFL savant. Big-time college quarterback. Nobody would disagree on that. Nobody. He was big-time. I saw him play. I thought, wow, this kid is really, really something. And then it doesn't happen at the level that I anticipated. He's still bouncing around the league.
So he's still playing.
I think he is, yeah.
You got me stumped.
In fact, I'm virtually certain he is with Washington.
Oh,
Mariota.
Yeah, Marcus Mariota. Yeah, he's the backup to Jaden Daniels. And you're right. A lot of people thought he was a Heisman Trophy winner.
Right.
Yeah.
He was awesome. He was awesome.
And he has shown
Oregon.
flashes during his NFL career, but it's never been consistent.
No.
Right.
And he's not considered a starter. Now, he's still in the league. He's making money, and that's great. And still get to play a kid's game and make a ton of money. That's awesome. But when I saw him play at Oregon, I thought, wow, he's really going to be something. And Oregon's one of these teams, it reminds me of the U of A basketball. They got a slew of quarterbacks who look good, but then they get in the NBA, and they can hang out, be around on teams' rosters, but none of them have been really big time. And Herbert now, maybe he will break that. We shall see. And Moore, the kid they got now, a kid out of Michigan who transferred into there played for Chip Kelly down in Westwood, and now he's projected to be a high pick. We shall see. But I thought Moore. Mariota. I thought he was going to be a big-time quarterback, so I missed on that one. I may have gotten Richardson right, but I missed on that one. So we'll see if Zach can get an opportunity to play. You can be on the roster, but Darnold didn't play for a little bit, and now he won the Super Bowl last year. So there's still hope for these guys, and we'll see if Daniel Jones can follow it up with an excellent season on the heels of what he did last year. All right, let's move on to college football.
Hashtag college football.
Here we go, man. North Carolina placing GM Mike Lombardi on paid administrative leave after an HR complaint was filed against him. And the College Sports Commission, the old CSC, indicated they were looking into NIL issues at UNC. So what does that mean?
So the CSC is that governing body that was created to monitor NIL.
So they're giving them NIL when they shouldn't?
Well, or they've been
shady,
circumventing how the CSC wants it to be reported. Yeah, so
circumvention of the rules.
Seems like that's been a topic in another sport we'll get to in a moment.
And they're dealing with money as far as that goes. And then Michigan AD Ward Manuel received a lump sum of $7.14 million as part of his separation agreement with the university. He'll have his final 3 years of his contract brought out, and he will resign at the end of this calendar season, or year, I should say, which is December 31st, obviously. So Big Ten is having their media days these next 3 days.
Correct. And did you see the big news for Ohio State? Just barely.
Yes, what do they do? They got a big contract.
They got jersey patch stuff. BYU did the thing with Entrada here locally. Well, they have signed with Chase and JP Morgan, and reportedly the Ohio State Buckeyes are going to make a cool $15 million annually to put a Chase banking logo on their uniform.
Yeah, so they're going national, and we'll discuss this. I was listening to some stuff driving in this morning, the valuations of college football programs. And what does that mean? Are there a few that are haves and a lot that are have-nots? And what does it mean for the Big 12? We'll get to that at the bottom of the hour. I was driving home yesterday after the show, flicking around on the radio, and I came across that interview with Kyle Whittingham. sat down, and that Rich Eisen dude, I think he's a Michigan fan.
Eisen, I think, went to Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
Like Schefter, I think they're both.
Yeah, you could tell. I mean, he basically said it. I don't have a problem with that, but it just you never ask Kyle a question that centers around, were you surprised? Did anything surprise you? Because he, every time, no matter what, will answer no. I knew it was coming. I was ready for it, blah, blah, blah. It's just funny to listen to him talk. He will never change in that way. You know, did it take you long to get into Michigan? A couple of months, and I'm ready to go. I've adapted. Oh, what's it going to be like in the big house when you're on the headset and the kids are out there playing? Well, I've already done it. I did it during spring ball. He wasn't that obstinate.
Yeah, but
he knows how to play the media game.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, but don't act like you're going to ask Kyle. You can ask him about his defense, his offense, what have you. We'll see about Jay Hill. He may be coming on tomorrow. Defensive coordinator for Michigan as they'll get going here next week. But this is funny. Anything surprise you? But no surprises. He'll always say that. All right, let's move on to the NBA.
Hashtag NBA.
This might be the best team ever he's been on. Better than the Miami Heat team.
This has the most talent, I think.
Most talented. That's what I meant. That is
the most talented team he's ever been on.
It's not even close. 1 through 5. If you look at their numbers, it's crazy.
And then you still have Anthony Simons. You still have Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. That team is loaded.
This might be the best team ever.
Charlie Villanueva. Remember him? He's saying that about LeBron. He said, it's not even close, and then he said this might be his best team ever. Well, you just told me it's not even close, then you tell me it maybe. So he formally signed with the Sixers, say he's going to live in New York and helicopter down. And some people took that as a slight to Philly. We know Kobe did that, lived in Newport and helicoptered his way to whatever they're calling the downtown arena now.
Crypto.com arena.
Yeah, so, I mean, the traffic is brutal, both sides. So, yeah, I get that. It's not that far away. I mean, it's almost about, I think Newport would probably be a little closer than downtown LA, than depending on where he lives in New York, to Philly. World 23. And then I saw, they're going to make him the point guard. Yeah, I said that when they point guard discussions with Chris Paul and other guys, who was the best. I would always take LeBron. I would took him every time.
He's an elite passer.
Yeah, and he can handle the ball, obviously. That was his big thing, is that, his size and strength and all, and be able to handle the ball like he did. Yeah, I think that's a great position for him, because you got a bunch of shooters, and he's not a shooter in the manner of the other guys are. That just wasn't his game, or isn't his game. He can make shots, obviously, but he's a leading scorer all the time. But it's about power and taking to the basket. And to have him, I wonder if it'll be like it was way back when Wilt Chamberlain did all that scoring, and then you look at his stats at the end with the Lakers, and he transformed his game. He wasn't a big-time scorer then. He was doing other aspects of the game. And so I wonder if we'll see that with LeBron, if he will only average maybe a career low, but he is doing a lot of other things to help his team win, and ultimately that's all that matters. Stats. Stats bore me. How do you help your team win? That's what excites me. That's what I'm about. What do you do to bring value to your team winning? Not how many stats you can pile up. Certainly in basketball, stats are boring. And those are for guys who try to act like they're smarter. And they are smarter than I am. I'm not interested in the stats. I'm interested in winning. What can you do to help your team win? All right, let's go to MLB.
Hashtag Major League Baseball.
Cedon swings and skies one into left field. Back on the warning track. Back at the wall. It is off the top of the wall and gone! Grand slam, Cedon!
Swing and a drive deep to left field. Forget it. A grand slam into the lower left field stance. Sorry, making a 3-run home run for Francisco Lindor, his second home run of the game.
Conine with a line shot into right for a base hit. Burke comes in to score, and this skid is snapped. Griffin Conine with a looper right over the jumping glove of the second baseman Bryson Stott.
Ah, man, the Marlins. How were they? Lost 12 in a row?
Correct.
They beat the Phillies 8-7 with a walk-off. Yeah, how about that? The Yankees continue to battle injuries. Cody Bellinger, who made the All-Star, I think he was MVP of the All-Star game for that matter. He's out 4 to 6 weeks. He's got a hamstring strain. They're obviously already missing Aaron Judge. Oh, no. That's a big-time blow there as far as that goes when you already got your best player out. And we'll see. They're hanging on. They're 2.5 behind Tampa Bay in the American League East, but obviously they've got a wild card berth they can get there. We'll see when and if those guys return. 4 to 6, that would put our guy Bellinger back about September 1st, right around there. Hard to believe that that's where we're at, but that is where we're at. 4 to 6 weeks will bring you into September at that point. Okay, and then, how about this one? Shohei Ohtani's former interpreter, Epe Mizuhara, told a reporter, I think ESPN, LA Dodgers star had agreed to cover his massive gambling debt reverse course less than 24 hours later. According to no released audio. What does that mean? Now, he recanted much of what he told the ESPN reporter in a second interview, admitting he had lied about Ohtani being willing to help. And I guess they're going to be doing a big 2-part deep dive.
Oh, it's like 6 parts, apparently.
6 parts? Yeah. Oh, I shorted them 4 parts. You never want to be shorted 4 parts. A deep dive. I love that expression. That means, you got to be interested in that. Then I saw this on the Bees. They're going to open their series in Sugar Land tonight against the Space Cowboys. You can listen to the call at 6:05 with Tony Parks, 6 p.m. with the pregame, 12:80 a.m. And I saw where one of the baseball national guys is saying that there are owners who expect how many games will be played next year? That would be friggin' 0.
Yeah, they think a full season lockout.
That is so sad, so bad. But the lockout will come because they want the salary cap. Players don't want the salary cap. And they're going to do battle over that and potentially miss a season. Oh, boy. They've done that from time to time, missed the 94 World Series, and it took steroids with the home run thing to bring it back between McGuire and Sosa 4 years later. We'll see what harm it does. Yeah, I think it'll do harm. It's a shame. Baseball, I went on a baseball trip this past week to both Chicago's and then the Minnesota, and the places were rocking. All 3 of them had great attendance. Wrigley, what I paid for Wrigley tickets, I could have got 10 tickets apiece for the White Sox and the Twins games. Wrigley's a little more expensive. That's the way it goes. All right, well, we'll have to unfortunately follow that story once we get into December and into February when spring training comes ahead. But that's a while from now, and I wouldn't expect to happen. It's just not will there be damage done, it's how much damage will be done. What is Trending is brought to you by Shamrock Plumbing. There's no job too big or too small. Get the personal touch with Shamrock Plumbing. All right, we are going to talk some college football today. We got our KSL insiders. Mitch Harper for BYU is going to be joining us at 8 o'clock, and we're going to spend the whole hour talking about BYU, and then we'll follow it up at 9 o'clock with Steve Bartle talking about the Utes. He's our Utah insider for KSL Sports. And money matters. Jock just told us about Ohio State. What was that, Chase Bank? Is that what you said?
Yeah, J.P. Morgan, Chase Bank.
Yeah, and what is your football team worth, and what does it mean? We'll get to that next. Stay with us. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Welcome to This is Chase Scott and Ben Anderson.
I am back to where I was before this whole summer league started.
Hall of Famer bust?
Are we sure any rookie is starting?
Oh, no. We should not be.
No.
I don't think that ever changed, though.
No, I'm totally with you. I started off with, I don't think he's going to start. I said I wouldn't be shocked if Svi Mikhailiuk starts. Maybe it's Ace, but the Jazz are trying to win games next year. Ace wasn't particularly good when he was on the floor in summer league either. I know he had back injuries, but is Ace ready to help you get to the playoffs as a starting starting shooting guard in the NBA? The truth is probably not. And I think Darren is showing that right now, probably not. He's certainly not the best option you have. And if you are worried about the game of politics out there of, well, why is Ace coming off the bench for Darren if Darren was good but not great in Summer League and Ace was good but not great during an entire regular season, maybe the answer is neither of them starts. That's totally fine.
Catch Jake and Ben afternoons from 2 to 6 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Win Tickets Wednesday. That's tomorrow, obviously. Do not miss your chance to win big every week on the KSL Sports Zone. This week, you can win tickets to see the Black Crows at Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater. That's coming up on August 13th. Listen to the KSL Sports Zone all day Wednesday for your chance to win. Okay. Now, did that just come out this morning about the Chase Bank thing, Yak?
Yeah, it broke this morning. Yep. And you and I both know this. This does not okay, what I'm trying to say. It does not happen if Big Ten Media Days is not, happening, if that makes sense.
Sure, yeah. Big Ten,
not a coincidence.
Big Ten
That's the term.
Media Days start officially today. The coaches were in town. It's in Chicago. They had played some golf in the afternoon, as I understand it. And then they'll do the stuff that we did 2 weeks ago. And the Big Ten goes last. I think that's symbolic in terms of the order. It goes Big 12, ACC, SEC, Big Ten. That's the way they do that. And because practices, some like Weber, I think if you play August 29th or that weekend before.
Week 0.
Yeah, that you can start practice this week.
Yeah, the Wildcats are having their first practice today.
Yeah, they sent that out. And Eric Kerr's team getting ready to go. We'll see how they do. Wish them well in the Big Sky. So, yeah, it's a chance for the Big Ten to strut its stuff that we are the most important, most valued, best conference. And they're having a measuring contest between the SEC and the Big Ten there. And then I saw something with Nick Saban saying, it doesn't matter how many national titles you win, so you just keep moving the goalposts because they haven't won one in 3 years. Because I think we've got 3 Big Ten teams, Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio State winning the last 3. So all of a sudden now that doesn't matter. So who is the top dog? Well, those two have separated. And there was a thing that came out last week, New York Times, which I think that's connected to the Athletic. And so they've got a thing, part of their Ramblings and Tears series, evaluation across the sports about key players, front offices, teams, franchise, and much more. And how much would it take to buy your favorite college football program? Did you see, who was it, Josh Pastner? Got himself in trouble in Vegas.
This is what this all stemmed from. He said, the teams want to bring an NBA team here. Why don't you just come buy the UNLV men's basketball team?
And then he had to walk it back a little bit.
I didn't actually mean to buy it.
Yeah. Well, bring on the money. So, no surprise here. The number one, if the teams were for sale, the number one program at a projected price of $2.38 billion. That is more than Smith paid for the Jazz, isn't it?
Yes.
That would be the Texas Longhorns. It says here they routinely lead the country in revenue, and we're the only team to top $200 million in the most recent financial reports. No program came within $25 million of Texas in either of the past 2 years. Now, they haven't won a national title since 2005, but they did make the college football playoffs each of the past 2 seasons, and they are ranked, of course, among the title contenders this year. Go back and listen to what Riley Jensen said yesterday. He'll be on the show tomorrow. DJ's off this week, and Riley will be sitting in the rest of the week. He can't make it today. And he doesn't believe Sarkisian has what it takes to lead a team all the way. He was talking about not being authentic enough. and he's a mental performance coach and can deal with all that stuff to see what that means. As far as that goes, you can get that on where you listen to your podcasts. So that's obviously an SEC team, right? Number 2, they have Georgia, another SEC team, at $1.92 billion. They've only had 5 losing seasons in the past 50 years. So we'll see. And then number 3, the aforementioned Ohio State Buckeyes. And they're going to get $15 million to wear a bank patch. And what, by way of comparison, the Monster drinks for the Big 12 is, because it's a conference-wide, I think it's $1.2 million.
It was $10 million across the league. No, sorry, $20 million across the league. Yeah. But you're right. It comes out to about $1.2 million per program, per team.
And Ohio State's going to get $15 million alone.
Correct.
And I don't know what the Big Ten is going to do, because you can do both. There's 2 shoulders, obviously. And so the Cougars will wear the Monster thing, and then this Entrada startup thing down in Utah County. How much are they going to pay? So it's logical to conclude that it's going to be nowhere near $15 million.
Correct. So, yeah, because this deal that Ohio State just signed is considered the top end of all these deals so far.
And so they're the first Big Ten team. Notre Dame at 4. Michigan at 5, Alabama. These are all in the billions. $1.7 billion for Alabama, $1.49 billion for Oklahoma, another SEC team. USC at 1.4. That's another Big Ten. Tennessee at number 9, 1.3. And Texas, Notre Dame, and Michigan are the only programs that reported. This came out last week. So when I say in the last fiscal year, it's literally the last fiscal year. Texas, Notre Dame, and Michigan, the only programs that reported more football revenue than Tennessee. So you got that going. And then LSU, round out the top 10 at $1.2 billion. Who do you think is the top Big 12 team that they have on their list? As far as if they were for sale, you can argue that with the private equity, to an extent, they are for sale.
Well, that answers that question. That would be the University of Utah.
They do have them at 29th at $539 million. As I look down this list, 29th is the highest of the Big 12. Average football revenue, $77 million. Below teams like South Carolina, Minnesota, North Carolina, teams that clearly Utah can compete with and compete with well. Number 23, who they play in week 2, is Arkansas at $646 million. Average football revenue, $8.8 million. So Utah being there at 29, TCU at 30. So those are your top 2. And then they've got the next one would be Texas Tech at 33. Average football revenue, I think they average it over like 3 years, $67.7 million. And then looking down the list. So coming in at 4th in the Big 12 would be the Sun Devils at 40. Average football revenue of $53.1 million. Where's BYU? Everyone's asking that right now, in your car, whatever you're doing. They got Colorado at 47, Kansas State at 49, still no BYU. And then finally, coming in at 50th place at $43.7 million is BYU. Doesn't that seem low?
It does, but if you look at that overall valuation, it shows them projecting having gone up well over $100 million in terms of their overall value, because they're now $500 million. They're $500 million. So you're quibbling because Utah's at 539, right? Is that what the
that what it said?
I believe so. So $40 million in the grand scheme of this, it's relative pennies. I know that sounds crazy to say about millions of dollars.
What are you, DJ? $539 million and average football revenue of 77.
Yeah, so the revenue side of it is the really strong one there. That Utah's got to obviously maintain that. They got to continue to generate that revenue, and the Otro Capital Partners deal should help them do that. The thing for BYU is I think BYU, when they came into the Power 4 PK, they're still a relative newcomer to this level. So I think they've jumped up pretty quickly.
Yeah, and that's to be considered for sure.
But the brand...
They didn't even get full revenue, and the Utes did.
And BYU's finally getting full revenue this year coming in. So we'll see.
It should be okay.
I'm interested to see where this goes 2, 3, 4 years down the line and see where those projections end up.
Yeah, and they could be much higher, BYU, but is it you have the best house in a lousy neighborhood? Is that what you're looking at?
Well, there's an argument to be had.
Yeah, and is it location? Would you rather have the best house in a bad neighborhood or the worst house in a good neighborhood? Now, financially speaking, I don't think there's any question that you want to have the worst house in a best neighborhood, because that best neighborhood is going to rise up your value. There's just no doubt about it. When I first moved here in Utah, we bought a house. We were wanting to get a house before because the Tribune was paying for my moving expenses, and we didn't want them to move us into an apartment and have to use storage and then have to pay for the moving ourselves. So we came up here on a weekend, and we looked at about 20 houses. Your eyes are blurry at that point. And I found one. It was not even close to the best house, but it was right next door. It was kind of on a curb of a street, and mine was just a little tract home, 1,600 square feet. And right next door, the road changed, and it curved, and literally changed the name of the road. And the name of the road was far more prestigious than my address, even though it was literally right next door. The side of their house faced our backyard, and then that street, which then had sweeping views of the valley because it was on a cliff. We didn't have it, but the next door neighbors did, and so forth. And then it was a bunch of custom homes that were worth way more. And 4 years later, we put our house up for sale. Boom, first freaking day. And we're in a panic mode because we had nowhere to go.
Hold on, it's supposed to sell this quickly. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
And so, fortunately, that it was an investor. Investors from Southern California bought the house, so we didn't have anywhere to go, and they just rented us back to us. So we owned the house, then we rented it back for about 6 months before we found a place to stay. But the point being, it was right next to some big-time custom homes. It was a small home, and we kept it up and tried to do the best we could. But the neighbors to our right, to the north, man, the prices went up and up and up. Boom. So the thing that I would be concerned about is where are we in 3, 4, 5 years for the Big 12? How much more are they going to fall behind financially?
And that's the other side of this, PK. You probably saw yesterday that Protect College Sports Act, or say whatever they're calling that act of Congress that's in the Senate right now. They're now proposing the cap hit for programs, if as currently constructed this law goes through, would allow athletic departments, universities to pay somewhere in the realm of $50 million to their athletes. We are currently at 20.
Yeah.
And they want to push it to 50. And $50 million, the vast majority of G6 programs, their athletic budgets are at that number. So how many of those programs, Big 12, ACC, can step up and go to that number, whereas I think more of the SEC and Big Ten schools would be capable of that because they're generating that much more revenue coming in from TV deals and the like.
Well, at the pre-Big Ten meetings yesterday. They officially get started today. Kyle Whittingham was talking about that, and I'll tell you what he said as far as NIL immediately, like now, what his thoughts are. I'll relay that to you next. Stay with us, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
3, 2, 1. This is Scotty G and Coach Tim LeComb.
SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey, as he kicked off and the SEC kicked off their football media day, said that he is not happy whatsoever with what's going on in terms of the Protect College Sports Act. He has had conversations. The conversations about them tearing away from the rest of college athletics is real.
You know, college football, it's ironic that they're against the Save College Football Act. They don't want to be governed. I mean, that's what I keep hearing. The SEC, the Big Ten, they're the ones that keep dragging their feet. Everybody else wants to get this done, but because they feel like they are better than everybody else, they should get a better deal.
I really can't stand this guy. I really, there are certain people out there that are just hell-bent on wrecking things that don't need to be wrecked.
Catch Scotty G and Coach weekdays from 10 to 2. Presented by Mountain Land Supply on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Welcome back in. We're going college football heavy today. At the top of the hour, Mitch Harper, our KSL insider for BYU, will be with us for the entire 8 o'clock hour. We'll talk about the Cougars. And then 9 o'clock, we'll give equal time to the Utes. Steve Bartle, who does the same thing for KSL Sports. We'll be talking about the Utes for that hour as we look forward to college football. Camps get underway next week for them. We already talked about Weber State beginning their camp now. As they get ready, they open up, the 29th, somewhere in there, against Northern Colorado. Ed Lamb will have 2 locals being head coaches for both of those programs. Obviously, Ed Lamb coached at Southern Utah and BYU under Kalani Sitake. And we know what Eric Hare did for Jordan and Corner Canyon. And so we'll be following those programs. That is 1 month from tomorrow, something like that. Yeah, man. Football is right around the corner. And Big Ten having their media days. So I was listening to Kyle. He was doing an interview yesterday, and he was talking about next year, NIL, some rosters will be $50 million. $50 million, man. Are these teams not those? And we know who they are, so we can suspect the teams, right? Usual suspects. Is it going to be like the Dodgers? Is that what we're going to have? Is it just going to be the ones who pay the most money? And $50 million. Who was it? That Seton kid who was at Colorado and then went to LSU?
Jordan Seton, yeah.
Yeah, and he came out, was it last week? $2 million is underpaid.
Yeah.
And then there was another video of him with his girlfriend with all these expensive handbags. You're sort of wasting your money on that. All these kids get all this money, and plus they got so many people hanging on. I can remember Matt Harpring told me when he made the NBA, one of his teammates called him up from college at Georgia Tech and asked him if he could buy him a car. Could he get him a car? Because he needed a car. And that's a ex-teammate. So you're going to have all these kids coming at you with so much money that you have and so many angles and $50 million. At what point, and this has been an ongoing discussion, it's nothing new really, at what point do we say enough is enough? At what point do you say enough is enough? Is there anybody out there, let us know, anybody out there who has said, I am done with college football because of the NIL? I like to think that I would say it. Now, I have a job, so that requires me to be into it, and it requires us to be into it. Even if I was frustrated and didn't want it and said, enough, I've had enough, I can't do it because I have to watch these teams play and listen to what their coaches and players say and then make evaluations on that. So it's impossible for me to say I'm out. But is anybody really out? Are you really out? I have my doubts. You can say you're out. You can say you're dismayed by it or bothered by it. but have you really checked out? What checking out means you don't pay attention at all. You don't care at all. You got nothing going on.
I think we spend all offseason belly aching about the woes of the sport, PK, but once a month from now when
right,
as they say, toe meets leather, we're all right back in.
Right, we are. But I'm wondering the fans.
I think we are because it's required.
It's work.
It's our job.
Great job.
But I'm telling you, I think the vast majority of college football fans,
they're going to still stay.
They're going to stick around.
I agree with you.
It's going to drag you right back in. Sorry.
I agree. I told a story. DJ would remember it. Longtime Tribune writer, editor, Dick Rosetta. He's retired. Been retired for a number of years now. I understand he's having some health troubles. Our thoughts go out to him. I always enjoyed working with him. And so I go down. He retired. And I go down. I must have been BYU. They're playing, I think it was a Thursday night game in San Diego. So I get down there Wednesday around noonish, and first thing I do was head over to Mission Beach, and I'm going to rent a boogie board and run out and try to ride some waves, right? One of my favorite activities. And there's that roller coaster there in Mission Beach. Many of you have been there. You know where I'm talking about there. There's a park across the street, and they have some rentals right there. So I get the board, and I go around the corner, and there's the Strand there. The sidewalk, and right there I run into Rosie, and he says to me, "What are you doing here? It's on a Wednesday. What's going on? Why are you here in the middle of the week on a Wednesday in September, October, maybe early October?" And the point I'm making is he'd retired, and he had no idea that BYU was playing the next night against the Aztecs over there at the Padres ballpark, and the Chargers played there. They got the new stadium now. And so he had checked out, but he'd retired, and he'd been in the business for many, many years, 40-plus years, I'm sure. And then one time, I think DJ was telling me he asked another local columnist who'd retired to come on his television show and talk about the Jazz, and he said, "DJ, I have no idea. I haven't watched one game. So I'm not capable of talking about them anymore because I don't pay attention." Those guys checked out. But and they were in the business for many years, so I can understand that. But will the average fan, will this drive you away? $50 million for a roster, $50 freaking million to just comprise a roster. How in the world are you supposed to compete with that? And I had BYU coaches tell me last year that Texas Tech's defensive line together was their entire NIL. Their entire NIL for their team. And they got hammered 63-14, was it? Something like that in the two games. Texas Tech got what it paid for. And then did you not take a little delight? I know you're supposed to root for the conference, but did you not take a little delight when they went and Oregon snuffed them? Didn't score a point? Did that drive a little satisfaction to you? I bet it did.
Here's the deal with college football. It is tribal as anything in sports, and yeah, we spend months and months about it's ruining the sport, but as soon as the games are on, we're all tuned in and we're all rooting on our team.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. And at least in the conference season, I guess you got to put Texas Tech aside. Are we now putting BYU aside? Because it seems like the rest of the teams are relatively ballpark to one another. So the conference season can bring you some joy because unless it's Texas Tech or BYU, and those are two teams who played in it last year, well, those are the two teams who will play it again in this year, and it will be more than just because of the talent on the field. Now, I still think you have to have development, and that's what gives me hope for Utah. Morgan Scalley coming off the Kyle Whittingham tree. They know how to develop talent. They know how to identify and develop. And we'll see about that. The D-News had a story, I think, yesterday. I think Dick Harmon had it, where a bunch of national people talked about development in the Big 12, whose programs were great at identifying and developing talent. So there is some form of purity, I guess, there still. But when it gets to the end, is it going to be the same teams because they spend the big money? But That does not mean your teams do not have a chance. We will talk with Mitch Harper about BYU for the next hour, and then at 9 o'clock we'll switch and we'll do Utah. So stay with us. We got you covered with college football right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. The Beehive Meals Hero of the Week. The KSL Sports Zone and Beehive Meals are honoring people that impact youth sports in our communities. Nominate the youth sports volunteer that you know for the Beehive Meals Hero of the Week at KSLSports.com/contest. Listen every Thursday afternoon to Jake and Ben for the winner. It's the Beehive Meals Hero of the Week. Joining us now is Mr. BYU extraordinaire, BYU insider for KSL Sports, Mitch Harper. Mitch, thanks for coming in. Right off the bat, we know that they report Monday, practices start next Wednesday. Going into this season, when do you recall expectations being this high, if ever, since you've been doing this?
I think it's the highest it's been in the Kalani Sitake era. I think the only other two seasons that maybe can compare in terms of high expectations, 2022, but that still feels tame considering that was independence.
Right.
Maybe you go to 2016 with Ty Detmer and, just the hoopla with that and the first year of Kalani and the excitement that he brought. You probably have to go back to 2008, the last time there's been this high of expectations where it was quest for perfection. This is probably the highest since then, and I think what makes it maybe the highest in the history of the program is the fact that there's a clear path to the playoff. BYU's never had that, and I think that alone makes this the greatest stakes, the most anticipated, and highest expectations for this BYU football program.
I think that's accurate, man. Sports radio has a tendency to be known for dramatic and never and always the best, the worst. But in this situation, as you just laid it out, there's a lot of truth to it, and there's a lot of evidence because they didn't have a path to the playoff. We know that Utah, in their undefeated seasons, were locked out. Now, the playoff was much smaller then. It's basically just two teams. So in this regard here, we've got 12, and they've got a clear path. It's there. There for sure if you win. It's there if you should manage to beat Notre Dame and maybe lose a game or two that you can get an automatic bid. And it seems like I don't know if the word is pressure, but maybe momentum is a better word, that is growing for the Big 12, particularly if BYU were to beat Notre Dame. And so you've got this conference schedule, which conference games are huge, but you got Notre Dame over there. And Notre Dame is expected to be a top 5 team, and you look at their schedule, and it's reasonable to conclude, it's October 17th, I think, that Notre Dame can come in to Provo undefeated. And if BYU should, which is not going to be an easy task, because what do they got? Arizona at home and then TCU on the road leading up to that. But if they do, and that they would knock off Notre Dame or even play Notre Dame close, that maybe this could be the year that an at-large bid, so that even ramps up the expectations even more. You don't necessarily have to win the conference.
Well, and also, too, the fact that everyone, as they said back in January, is running it back. And, talking to people at that time in those January, roster building, retention phase of roster construction, that was a wild time where big dollar amounts are getting thrown around. And so BYU's spending money. Now, are they perceived at the level of Texas Tech? No. They're still probably, I would say, probably about another $20 million short of what Texas Tech's going to be paying, which is reported around like $45 million. But BYU's invested. They want to win, and we've seen that in the Big 12. And I think I look at this season, too, in a way, PK, that it almost feels a little bit like a year one as well, because now we're in this new era with Kalani Sitake where he is established as the guy. And, a year ago at this time, I remember we were previewing the season. I thought there's no reason to ever move on from Kalani. But clearly Kalani felt slighted and that he felt like there wasn't enough resources being poured in to where he flirts with Penn State. Now he knows he's got the resources that he was seeking and for his staff. And the challenge now is to make BYU a powerhouse. He once said that he wanted to be the Polynesian Lavelle Edwards, and I think Lavelle kind of said, hey, maybe don't do that a little bit. But, he now has that path, that opportunity to make BYU a power. And I think that's the challenge in front of him. And it starts with this year one of this new era where he is comfortably in place as the head coach of the Cougars. I think that's kind of an underlying fun storyline as well with this season that's going to be highly anticipated.
Yeah, last December was a bizarre month here in the state. There was a time that I thought that right now, today, we'd be talking about Jay Hill as the BYU football coach.
Yep.
And I can tell you that there were people on the staff who thought Jay Hill was going to be the football coach because they thought that Kalani was going to take the Penn State job, and that there were some people, and literally assistants, thought they were moving, and they were anticipating moving, that they would go with him if Kalani had decided that coaches XYZ, like Kyle did, would take whomever he decided to take with Michigan. And so that did not happen. And then 3 weeks later, not only is Jay Hill not the BYU head coach, he's not the BYU defensive coordinator. That was the day after Christmas. That was a bizarre 3 weeks in the state of Utah college football history. So that leads me to, with Kalani being secure and getting what he was looking for and all that and wanting to stay at, I think that's where his heart was. And if BYU came to the table with sufficient funds, that he would stay, and he did. But he loses Guilford as the corners coach, and then Jay Hill goes to Michigan to be Kyle's defensive coordinator, and they elevate Kelly Poppinga. So from a coaching standpoint, I think those are the two changes, right?
That's right. And then you bring in Chad Kahaha as elevate him from analyst to outside linebacker position coach. But as far as losses, that was it. And that's pretty impressive. And I think it was also noteworthy, too, that they kept Gary Anderson, because we know, what's interesting with K-Pop is that he connects those great Bronco defenses, and there were some great ones, back in 2012, where they were maybe the best defense in college football with Kyle Van Noy, and even the defenses that K-Pop was in the middle with in 2007. I remember statistically they were one of the better defenses nationally. He connects the Bronco era, but he's also become, the past 3 years, a little bit of the student of the defense that we've seen up close and in person for decades that stood the test of time. The Kyle Whittingham, Fred Whittingham, Kalani, Scally defense, Gary Anderson defense. Now he's learning that, and he can bring the best of both of those worlds together. I think that's a fascinating dynamic. And Kalani always knew that K-Pop was going to be his DC because, and I think that's what's impressive about Kalani, what he has done when he has to pull a lever on the coaching change. There is usually an upgrade. We saw it from Detmer to Grimes, from Tuiaki to Jay Hill. This is probably the most challenging one because this was a guy that left. It wasn't a firing. Jay Hill departed for Michigan, but I think that typically we have seen an upgrade in BYU improving whenever Kalani has to make a change. And he was pretty bullish on K-Pop, and I think the early returns would suggest it's been a pretty good fit thus far. Now the true test comes with camp approaching.
Yeah, I always thought Kelly, he was a dynamic player, and he's a dynamic personality, and he's one of these guys that could relate. If I brought in football, you have a hodgepodge of people, and they all come together. That's what's fascinating about it, that if I brought in three guys, just say as an example, and they all came from different backgrounds, Kelly Poppinga would find common ground with each of those three. He'd be able to relate to each of those three in some way, and then he would get each of those three to find a way to relate to each other. So as a human being and then as a recruiter, I thought he was top-notch. Now he gets this opportunity to be as a defensive coordinator for the first time, but he's been trained by some really good people that are, and some of the people are still in the program. You mentioned Gary, and Kahaha has been around the block himself, and he has been in the state too under the tutelage of Gary and at the U of U and all that stuff. So I don't know if I can say a seamless transition, a seamless transition, but given the fact that there's a lot of holdover dudes who were on the team last year, I'm not really expecting them to miss a beat.
I'm with you, and I think that stopping the run, I think, is going to be critical for this group. And I think their defensive line is going to be really good this year. I think this is going to be one of the better defensive lines Kalani's had since he's been the head coach, because last year there was a little bit at times bend but don't break. They dropped they were 35th nationally in total defensive season ago. They were 13th 2 years ago in 2024. So there was at times a little bend but don't break. And remember, they'd get down big in some games. Even Colorado, they're down 14-0. The bowl game against Georgia Tech, if they can be better at stopping the run. And I kind of look at, last year, you look at some of the top, 15 teams in total run defense. It was about 100 yards or less. Can they be in that territory? Because I don't think Texas Tech's slowing down. And at some point, you might have to face them if you get there in a Big 12 championship game again. You got to be a stout, elite run defense, because I would expect Texas Tech is going to be that once again. BYU's got the personnel, I think, to potentially do that. Someone like a Justin Kirkland, who's finally healthy. He was expected to be big last year, but he was never healthy. And then Keanu Tanavasa, preseason first-team All-Big 12 guy, and Bodie Schoonover, I'm expecting a jump from him, as well as a senior once from American Fork. So there's some good depth there. And even Kelly Papinga last December, before he became the defensive coordinator, he even said that they felt great about the future at defensive end in the program. That's when he was the D-ends coach, to the point where they knew even last December that they were not going to pursue portal guys. They really believed in the young personnel. Well, let's start to see the early returns on that talent at that spot this season.
That's the voice of Mitch Harper, KSL Insider. You can read all of his stuff at KSLSports.com. Comprehensive coverage of the Cougars and Utes that we have here on the KSL Sports Zone. Now, with that in mind, you talk about stopping the run, getting the quarterback, those types of things from the down linemen. I got the impression that talking at the Big 12 Media Day, which is, 3 weeks ago now, that a guy like Tanavasa, who's in the middle, he was irritated that Jack Kelly led the team in sacks. That he took that as, I don't want to say disrespectful, because Kelly's a great player and he'll go on and play in the NFL, and good for him. But he felt like we need to be doing that.
Yeah.
My guys that are side by side, not the guys behind us, the guys next to me, we need to be bringing that quarterback down. So we need to increase. So basically, listening to him talk, it was like, that better be us this year, and I'm going to put us on notice. Now, you guys were down there too. We were doing the radio. You guys were doing other stuff, and so I'm sure you had opportunities to talk to him about that. Did you get that feeling like I did?
I do, and I mean, it's been a long time, since BYU had a dominant pass rusher. You got to go back to Bronson Kafusi last time they had 10-plus sacks from a defensive lineman. That was 2015. And that's been shocking, I think, in the Kalani era, is that they just haven't had those elite defensive lines. I think everyone assumed when Kalani became the head coach that it would just be Sack Lake City carried over to Provo. And that just really hasn't happened. And some of it's been maybe they took a lot more developmental personnel that were unknown two-star recruits, and that was a hit-and-miss type of deal, and they never truly had the depth to be that level of production. I think they feel now that they've got that star power along the defensive line and from the strength and conditioning staff, too. Kalani will always say, the sports science and things like that, but they really do believe that they've physically gotten to a level where they can be elite in that area. But, yeah, I think that Keanu Tanavasa, he was very bullish on the defensive line when asked about the position that's going to be maybe the strongest on the team. He was kind of biased and said the defensive line. And I think some of those guys, too, I'm curious to see how they kind of configure. Is it going to be more of an odd front, at times where you got three guys potentially with this group? And because you could have, Nusi Taumoi-Peau, who could be an edge rusher, but obviously an outside linebacker, Hunter Clegg, in that same mold of that outside linebacker, edge rusher. How do they utilize these guys? That'll be kind of fun to see. Maybe some inkling in fall camp, but truly when the games start happening. But this Keanu Tanavasa, too, I think has got to take a step forward as well, because I think a lot of Cougar fans, when they signed him out of the portal, they expected the Keanu that was dominant in 2024 against BYU at Rice-Eccles Stadium. That Keanu did not show up enough last season, and I think that's why he's back this year, because a year ago at this time he thought he was off to the NFL.
Yeah.
And so I think there's some motivation there for him to be more dominant as well, and it's got to show up.
Well, for sure, as far as that goes. Now, that's not to take anything away from the linebacking core. We know Kelly, I just mentioned him, he's gone. But everything we hear about this Cal transfer, Ulavale, is that how you say it?
Uluwave, yeah.
Yeah, that they're expecting basically the same type of production. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, first-team All-ACC selection at Cal last year, once a Pac-12 freshman of the year in his first season at Cal. He's going to step right in and be a star. I mean, he might be one of the fastest players behind Evan Johnson on this team, as far as speed goes. And he was playing throughout spring with a club on his thumb. Now he's fully healthy, but he was even dominant with the club on his hand. So Kedu Uluwave is going to be an excellent football player for BYU. And what's crazy is he could have a second year after this one with the 5-5 ruling, if in fact that actually gets all cleared. He could have another year after this one. So he's going to be a special player. And how BYU utilizes him, I think, too, he'll probably be a guy I would expect would probably be that green dot coach-to-player communication. Get that. That was last year. That was Jack Kelly who had that sticker last season. But I think that he's so violent. I mean, he just gets downhill with his speed and the physicality, too, that he plays with. And you pair him up with Isaiah Glasker, I think Sialia Sarah, he's fully healthy. He's looking to kind of bounce back and become more of a factor in this linebacking unit. And then, Nusi Taumai Payout, Braxton Lindsay, a true freshman from Arkansas. He could be a name to really watch. He was one of the stars that took over in the Isaiah Glasker role during spring while Glasker was out. Lindsay could be a two-deep guy as a true freshman. They are stacked at linebacker, and they've even got some deep-cut guys like Pearson Watson from Flagstaff, Arizona, who they really like. This is
Flagstaff,
a really good
Arizona.
Yeah, this is a really good
linebacker unit. I spent 2 years in
unit.
Flagstaff, and that was not on a mission.
Coconino High School, PK.
Coconino, yeah. Coconino High School. Coconino County.
What were you doing in Flagstaff?
I went to NAU.
Okay.
For 2 years.
Gotcha. I didn't know that. It was ASU. I didn't know there was a stop at Northern Arizona.
Yes. There was 2 years at Northern Arizona. My first 2 years out of high school.
I didn't know that.
At heart, I'm a Big Sky guy.
So you're a lumberjack then?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
But it's a good linebacking unit, though. That's for sure. I think this will be, and I think that's kind of been the strength, I think, of BYU defenses, because historically it was always, cornerbacks, you're going to take a flyer, maybe get some JUCOs back in the day, get some 2-stars, but that's always been the bread and butter of BYU football. And K-Pop being a former linebacker, I only think that's going to continue, maybe even a higher level potentially going forward. But that is always going to be the position of strength for BYU football defensively. And 2026 on paper would suggest that that's going to be more the same, if not better, this upcoming fall.
And Ulavale, I thought he had the coolest line. Now, he went to Cal Berkeley, which is known for having uprising or two, and that's before 9 o'clock each morning. And he said he's traded in protests for prayer.
So fitting. I even asked him, too, back in April, just the shock of going from Cal to BYU. And I said, on the surface, that sounds pretty extreme. Like, how has it been for you? And he even noted that it is a lot different. He says he's glad to be back home because he's former Mountain Ridge High product, and BYU didn't recruit him that much. And he goes to Cal and was a heck of a football player for Cal. But, yeah, he did note that a little more family-oriented at BYU, a little bit different culture, obviously, with Kalani Sitake and the way that the players in the locker room operate. It's much different, but he definitely feels, as he put it, at home. He even noted that there's some deep family connections that he's found out from in Provo. But he's going to be, I think, a really good fit for BYU in this defense. How do they replace Tanner Wall in the back end? Well, I think their safety position is going to be a position of strength. You look at Raider Damuni, Falatau, Satawala as the top two guys. And Falatau, I think, has got the potential to be one of the all-time great safeties in BYU history. I really do. And there's been some good ones. I mean, you go back through the years, Morrell, kind of Kua. I mean, even some years in Bronco where Andrew Rich. I mean, there's been some Francisco, really good safeties. But I think Faletau Tawala, I mean, his size, his speed, his athleticism, and his playmaking ability last year, that Iowa State game where he gets an interception, he's going to be big time for the Cougars. And Kalani told me that they expect him to play during fall camp at some point, maybe not week 1, but they expect him to practice with that injured right foot in fall camp, and that Kalani said he will be ready to go week 1. He told me at Big 12 Media Days. So they're expecting Faletau to be fully healthy, ready to roll for the season ahead, and that's critical because he is key to that defense. And then, Raider Mooney, he goes into his senior season. I think he's been really solid throughout his BYU career, but can he take a greater jump? He's really good, but I think that there's got to be more, maybe consistency. Remember, he was starting in front of Faletau last season before he got injured against Arizona midway through the year. And then I think a wild card on the back end of the defense is true freshman Kenan Pula from Lone Peak High School. He could be one that maybe emerges as that third safety. You've also got Tommy Parasis, too, who could play that safety nickel spot as well. You could see 3 safeties on the field at times a lot this year, but then Kenan Pula being that third or fourth guy. So I think it's a really good safety position, even without Tanner Wall, who's off to the Raiders, and I think he's got a great chance to make that Raiders squad.
All right, that's Mitch Harper. We talked defense. We'll switch over to the other side of the ball. Stay with us, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Turn it up. Let's go. It's a new era for sports radio in Utah. This is the all-new KSL Sports Zone. As always, DJ and PK kick off your mornings from 6 to 10. Then introducing the newest addition to the KSL Sports Zone. The coach, Tim Lacombe, joins Scotty G every day from 10 to 2. And as you wrap up your day, Jake Scott and Ben Anderson are there with the best sports talk in Utah from 2 to 6. Live and local, all day, every day. Your home for the best sports radio in Utah is live, on air, online, and on the KSL Sports app. This is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Thanks for joining us on this Tuesday morning. We've got Mitch Harper, our KSL Sports Insider for BYU, be with us for the next 2 segments, and then at top of the hour, we'll flip it and we'll go to Utah. Steve Bartle will be in, and we'll be talking about the Utes. So we covered our defensive perspective. Offensively, this is crazy, man. This is the first time that they've had a returning quarterback since
Jaron Hall.
Yeah, going back.
Before the Big 12 era.
Yeah, and they've managed to have success, and I think Bachmeier caught us by surprise a little bit. Didn't catch me by surprise that he was the starter, because I thought he was going to win the job all along, as long as he got down the offense, and he obviously did get the offense down. Now, he was so highly productive, but yet now more we're expecting. How do you define more?
He's got to, I think, improve his completion percentage. That was about 64% last year. Get it up to around 70%. I think that's going to be the expectation there, because there's a little bit of a blueprint with Zach Wilson, Jaron Hall. Those have been the best performing quarterbacks under Aaron Roderick at BYU, and those guys were hovering around 70%, and those probably their best seasons in 2020 and 2021. So if they can get to that, if the Bear can be to that level of accuracy, that could serve BYU quite well. And I think also the deep ball, you saw in that Big 12 championship game, he was obviously hobbled, but he couldn't throw it down the field. And again, I think it was in large part because of that ankle that got hurt on that first scoring drive in that game. But, his deep ball accuracy, that's been a calling card of Aaron Roderick offenses in the past with Zach and Jaron Hall, is the ability to stretch the field, and even Jake Retzloff, too, at times. So does BYU, their offense, move a little faster? Last season, they were 9th in time of possession. Seemed like they were kind of a slow, methodical moving, took care of the football, very safe, didn't unleash the playbook. Well, as Bear put it, the playbook is completely unleashed to him now. And even Aaron Roderick said he's got 3 or 4 different looks on any given play. That's the type of stuff that Zach and Jaron were getting. So that's kind of the expectation, is to step it up to a higher level. And I think this is an important year for Bear, because And I asked A-Rod this in spring, how are they going to handle, next year, Rider Lions and Bear? And Rider Lions, the highest rated recruit since Ben Olsen in 2002, a quarter century. If Bear takes a step back, has a sophomore slump at all, does that create a quarterback debate? So I think it's an important season for Bear to be really good. I think he will. I don't think there's going to be a sophomore slump. I thought he was really good in spring, and I expect that, physically he's dropped some weight, look a little leaner, even though he does say he's still on the seafood diet. He loves to eat, but he does look physically better than he did last season. He looked like a kid. Now he's been a full year in a college weight room. But I think that's kind of an interesting element here, is that you've got that blue chip recruit waiting in the wings. So it's an important year for Bear to, if he wants to cement himself clearly as QB1 for the foreseeable future. And as of right now, he clearly is. But you got to continue to have success, because the tides can turn quickly if you struggle at all at quarterback, especially with the season with such high expectations.
Do you think there's a chance that Kalani talks about he doesn't care how you score, just score, that with that in mind, they could be less reliant on LJ Martin?
I think they got to I think LJ still is the centerpiece of it all. And I think, obviously with the ability to stretch the field through the air, Kalani, I think to his core, would love to have more of that, because I think it's almost like a hat tip to the BYU offenses of old, and Kalani being growing up the BYU fan, and I think that's just the style of play. Like BYU wants to be an entertaining product, that high-powered offense that can beat you in many different ways. Last year was pretty much on the ground, win 24-10 and call it a day and move on with it. Still, LJ is going to be the key focal point. I think LJ is going to be better this year, even though last year he was the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. He could be better this season. So I think that he's going to have a big year, and I think Bear's still going to run quite a bit, though. And I think that's going to be something that I'm really curious to see this season. How much does he run? I think it'll be about the same, because that's just kind of in Bear's DNA, and there's not a proven number 2 guy after LJ right now. Right. Sione Moa, expected to be that RB2, and I think Sione, when healthy, he's really good, but coming back from compartment syndrome, where even Intermountain Health was putting out a Facebook post saying, we nearly amputated the man's leg, and now he's going to be RB2 this year. So that's kind of a wild turn of events that I'm not used to seeing from a player's career arc. But, Devon Eka as well from Lehigh High School, really big physically, but has he got up to speed with the playbook? That's kind of a question there too. But running the football will still be at its core, but they got to have more of an ability to stretch the field downfield through the air.
Now we got these 2 tight end transfers coming in, right? You already talked about Ryder, his older brother Walker, and the other guy from Oregon,
Roger Saliapaga.
Yeah, and so we know BYU. You talk about linebacker. Historically has been a strong spot. Tight end too, and they had it last year with Carson Ryan, obviously, and he's off to the NFL. We'll see. Hopefully, he makes that team. Is it Cleveland?
Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, and so with that in mind, what can we expect from this tandem?
I think that that's going to be the guys that maybe lead the team in receiving yards. Last year BYU had 2 players that were in the top 7 in the Big 12 in receiving yards with Parker Kingston and Chase Roberts. I don't see a wide receiver right now that would come anywhere close to that. The top 10 of the Big 12 was around 750 yards. I don't see – I think that I'd be more confident in the tight ends, maybe having someone emerge with that level of production compared to the current wide receivers. Last year, Carson Ryan had about 620 receiving yards. I think Walker Lyons or Saliapaga, them together definitely could pass that. But one of them on their own could pass that. So, Saliapaga and Lyons, it was pretty evident that they are some of the best players in the program. And I'll admit, I was a little bit surprised with Saliapaga. I didn't really know what to expect from him because he really didn't play at all at Oregon. But he steps in and instantly becomes a key piece for BYU. And I think it's interesting, too, that these guys that were, maybe Big Ten buried depth chart guys. Walker Lyons played more than Saliapaga, but they instantly step in at BYU and just become stars, or at least are assumed to be stars. Maybe is that the highlighting of the talent gap between Big Ten and Big 12? I don't know, but it is kind of interesting when you do look at it that way. I think that they're going to be key focal points, though. And Walker Lyons, I think, is the better receiving tight end. I think he can do it all, too. But Saliapaga's got a lot of speed as well. I think, he could be really a key factor as well. So I think this is a really good tight end tandem. Lyons, I think, is probably the best NFL prospect out of those two tight ends. But now they have an extra year as well with the 5-5 if that goes through. So this could be a nice tandem in the mold of back in the day, Chad Lewis, Atula Mealy of old, maybe potentially throwing that out there with maybe this could be a 2-year deal where these guys could be a great 1-2 punch at that position.
So you bring up the tight ends and you praise them, and I get the impression that it is, and you brought up the Roberts and Kingston last year. So praising the tight ends comes a little bit at the expense of the receivers.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't think there's any clearly defined 1, 2, and 3. I think the messaging that you would want to hear if you're a BYU fan from Kalani and A-Rod and Fesi Sitake is that these are our top 3 receivers and we're rolling with them. I would assume that's probably JoJo Phillips, Kyler Casper, and I would say true freshman from Lehigh High School, Legend Glasgow. That's probably the top 3 guys that I would expect going in to fall camp. And, Legend Glasgow, even Bear Bachmeier raved about him at Big 12 Media Day, saying he knows the playbook inside and out, and he made great plays right away. And I think there's a real opportunity there. JoJo Phillips, he's been someone that this coaching staff trusts and believes in for, since he's arrived on campus in 2023. And you go back to that, Oklahoma State game 2 years ago where they had that thrilling game winner with Darius Laster. The original read was for JoJo Phillips, who at the time was a redshirt freshman. So there's been little glimpses and moments where it would suggest that he could be a focal point of the offense, but injuries and maybe just the emergence of Parker Kingston and the steadiness and high-level production of Chase Roberts, there maybe hasn't been that opportunity. Well, now it's there. Do you want to be the wide receiver 1 or not? It's right in front of him. And he's got to be the one that's looked upon to be that guy. Coming out of spring, he was the wide receiver 1, and Fesi Sitake said as much, that he was the first, wide receiver 1 for this unit. Can he be that? Last year at this time, I wouldn't have thought that Parker Kingston could emerge as the third leading receiver in the Big 12. I just think what hurts this group is that you don't have a clearly defined wide receiver 1 to maybe free up and create some a rising star to emerge, where this is all kind of they're all on even footing, in my opinion, and that someone's got to emerge. And that's the one spot on this offense that's kind of a glaring, maybe weak spot right now going into camp.
And you talk about this Casper. I mean, is he going to go to the NBA? Is he going to be in the dunk contest? I mean, I saw some pictures of him dunking over cars and buildings and human beings and all sorts of stuff. So the athleticism obviously is there.
Yeah, it is. 6'6", and it just there's been no production in college football because he's had multiple foot injuries, 2 different foot injuries in his college career at Oregon. He's been in college football for 4 years. He's heading into his 5th. He's had some medical redshirt years given to him, so he's still got this year and next if he wanted at BYU. Injuries have just derailed him. So can he stay healthy? If he does, they loved him in spring ball. But again, I think the Big 12's got better secondaries than what we've seen in the past. I think this is the depth at cornerback in the league is really good. Now, it helps that they go against one of the best ones in the conference in Evan Johnson on a regular basis, but I think that's going to be something. I've seen many BYU games of the past where they feel good about a wide receiver unit, and then they can't get off the line and they can't get open. And, so there's no Puka Nacua in this unit. There's no Chase Roberts. There's no clear star right now. So when you get kind of a pedestrian wide receiver unit, I kind of temper expectations a little bit with that spot unless they prove otherwise. And that there is some talent there, but still, I think that it's a big question mark going into camp right now.
That's Mitch Harper, our KSL Sports Insider. So we'll see what happens there. Sort of a show-me type position before you start making any pronouncements. Let's see what they can do. And they'll have that opportunity. Now, if they emerge or not, obviously it makes the team better if they do. If they don't, they're going to have to find other ways to get down the field. But the good thing is the guys up front. You always hear next man up. It seems like from the offensive line perspective, BYU has gotten into this next man up type of deal while still maintaining the same or close to level of production.
I believe so as well. I mean, I think the offensive line is going to be better this year. I do. Bruce Mitchell anchors the whole thing at that center position, and you look at Kalani's tenure at BYU head coach. It's just been. It embodies that next man up. Karoma, Empey, Connor Pay, then Bruce Mitchell. That center position has just been steady throughout Kalani's tenure as the head coach, and Bruce Mitchell maybe could be the best of the group. So he's in the middle there at center. I think the tackles are going to be really good with Andrew Gentry returning at right tackle, and then Paki Finau at left tackle. Maybe a little bit of a question with Finau, considering he's primarily played guard in his football career. He's now playing a new spot at left tackle, but they want him there. They feel like he's best served to be there, and he looked really good in spring ball. And maybe a little bit of question too at times with the guard. Could they get maybe more production from that spot? You've got Kyle Safarchuk, who I think is going to be really steady for BYU, but maybe that other guard spot at right guard, Sonny Mocassini, he was injured in spring. He comes back. He would be the assumed starter, but there's Junior Sia, Utah State transfer. Zach Yamauchi was injured in spring ball, dealing with a pec injury. Is he ready to go? Because he's from Stanford. He could be in that conversation at the guard position. But they've got options, and they still got Batmuli Talo, a top 100 recruit who, Kalani is always shy about making comparisons. He's put him in the mold of a Kingsley Suamataia and even Penei Sewell in terms of the ceiling of someone like Batmuli Talo, who was primarily playing at right tackle during spring ball in the second unit. True freshman out of Lone Peak, barely learning the offensive line position, converted over from D-line. He'll be one to watch as well. Maybe he could climb and really establish himself as in that solidified 2 deep, but also maybe make the conversation of get him to left tackle. Maybe you put Finau at guard, and then you shore up that 5 spot if, the freshman really takes off in fall camp. But they're going to be patient with him throughout this process.
That's Mitch Harper. We got one more segment with the BYU expert. You hear, man, he just rifles off these names as if he's reading a list. This dude knows his stuff. Check it all out at KSLSports.com. One more segment. We'll wrap it up, and then we'll get to the Utes. Stay with us. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
3, 2, 1. This is Scotty G and Coach Tim LeCombe.
SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey, as he kicked off and the SEC kicked off their football media day, said that he is not happy whatsoever with what's going on in terms of the Protect College Sports Act. He has had conversations. The conversations about them tearing away from the rest of college athletics is real.
College football, it's ironic that they're against the Save College Football Act. They don't want to be governed. I mean, that's what I keep hearing. The SEC, the Big Ten, they're the ones that keep dragging their feet. Everybody else wants to get this done, but because they feel like they are better than everybody else, they should get a better deal.
I really can't stand this guy. There are certain people out there that are just hell-bent on wrecking things that don't need to be wrecked.
Catch Scotty G and Coach weekdays from 10 to 2. Presented by Mountain Land Supply on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
All right, final segment talking about BYU for today. I believe we'll continue to talk about them in the coming months. A lot. For sure. I'm super excited about this college football season because, we've got storylines all up and down the Wasatch Front. BYU, Utah expected to be good. Bronco. I covered Bronco in his first game as a head coach way back when.
Boston College is getting booed.
Yeah.
And he never let that go.
No, he did not. No, he did not. Because it was like they were inside Boston College territory and he punts. And got netted 15 yards or something. But I always enjoyed covering Bronco and see what he does at Utah State. And then my guy, I've known him for many years at Weber State, Coach Kerr. See what he can do. High school coach with like 110-10 was his record. So see, you're going to rejuvenate Weber. And as I said, I'm a Big Sky guy. Went to my 2 years at NAU. I think I went to every home game and enjoyed them. That was the first year the Dome opened up there.
Wow.
I don't know if you've been up. If you've been to the
I've
campus.
seen the
Yeah. So Dome. That was our first year. My first year was the first year of the Dome. A guy named Joe Salem who went on and coached at Minnesota. Yeah, he had some success at NAU back then, and so went on and moved on from there. So with that in mind, Mitch Harper joining us. We're talking about BYU football, obviously. With that in mind, just, we won't hold you to this projection, but when we get to December and the awards come out, how many first-team Big 12 guys do you think we'll have on BYU's football team?
I think they'll have 5. I would say L.J. Martin, Bruce Mitchell. I'd go Kedu Luave, Isaiah Glasker, and Evan Johnson.
Okay.
Well, 6. 6 also. Falatau Satawal as well. 6. I'll go 6.
Okay. And with football and in college, it never ends. People get excited about recruiting. Just give us an update as to where they are and what they need to get done here for guys who are going into their senior year of high school.
It was a slow build with this 2027 class that picked up some steam because there was that stretch where they lost out on Bodie Sparrow from Davis High, and that was a big loss. Because
what's the deal with Oklahoma? What's the connection?
Oklahoma, there really isn't a connection. I mean, now recently, a couple weeks ago, they had added Mania Brown as a recruiting staffer onto their staff. But I think it was just simply they look at this state as a prime opportunity to get guys that are well-developed. I mean, the resources in this state, it's pretty impressive what's being put into these high school football programs. Good character, good families, football, mature athletes, and they want to get them into their programs. And it's maybe because I think there's still this feeling in the state of Utah where we still feel like an underdog for some reason, that the in-state schools are less than in Oklahoma, where it's like, why can't BYU and Utah do everything more than what Oklahoma does? But I still think there's a program like Oklahoma looks at this place and says there's opportunity to pick off some top-end guys that sometimes, I mean, this state gets recruited quite a bit, but still pales in comparison to the Texases, Ohio's, Florida's. Sure. So I think Oklahoma's just kind of identified a niche and said, let's go attack that state and get some really good football players, and for good reason. I think the recruiting in this state is going up, but BYU did beat out Oklahoma for Uhila Wolfgram from Maple Mountain, who I think a special edge rusher, Maple Mountain, kind of under the radar guy, but I mean, physically he could be in BYU's program right now and look every bit the part of college defensive end, which is saying something considering defensive end with high school, you would think they're going to be undersized, got to add 40 pounds or whatnot. He is ready physically already, and that was a recruitment that really took off in the winter time when he had some viral clip that went crazy in of all things, an Oklahoma drill. And then his recruitment really took off, but BYU stayed the course with him, got him. He's a 4-star kid. I think it's interesting with this upcoming fall. I don't expect much activity. They're still waiting on a Ridgeline High recruit and Owen Leishman. He was a visitor back in June. He's heading into his senior season, a linebacker / athlete tight end prospect out of Ridgeline. But with the 5-5, you could have Uluwave back. You could have Raider Damuni back. And you have all these guys that could run it back that maybe a year ago at this time when you were forecasting out recruiting classes, they weren't in your future spreadsheets and roster building. So right now they're about 15 commits right now. I wouldn't expect many more because you've got 5-5. Then you've also got the portal where you want to fill those gaps with some proven commodities. And Kalani's shown that they don't want to turn to the portal often, but typically, 7 to 10 guys every cycle you want to get. So just on a numbers game with only 105 roster spots and all the influx of return missionaries with Ryder Lyons, Brock Harris, the heralded tight end, there's just not many more spots available for that 2027 cycle unless, they'll always keep an option open for a guy that, bursts on the scene and has a big senior year and takes off. But that's one of the downsides we're seeing with the portal and this extra year of eligibility given to college guys it's kind of weeding out that senior riser high school kid. They're not getting as many opportunities, whereas sometimes we'd see back in the day, they'd go into January or February, and they're like the hot thing, because after they took off in their senior year of high school, we don't see that as much anymore when it comes to high school recruiting.
So then if you want to be a high school recruit, you better start blowing up as a junior.
Yeah, sophomore and junior year, and then those spring, 7-on-7, those camp circuits, that's where it really takes off. It's getting earlier and earlier than ever before. I mean, honestly, I've been saying on Cougar Tracks that, July 4th is kind of the unofficial, end date when it comes to building out these recruiting classes, because then you roll into kind of a lull period for the coaches, fall camp, the regular season, and then it's focusing on the next year, 2028, and so forth. So with the early signing day, too, being in that first week of December, which coincides with conference championship week, these coaching staffs are going to think they're getting ready for a game. So you get to a point where you just don't have as much time and man hours to really go and get that senior riser that burst onto the scene was a late developer.
So then you think that they could be 90% done?
I think so, for the most part. I think for the most part, they will be pretty much done when it comes to high school recruiting, just because there's so many more buckets now. And again, they've got a really impactful return missionary class coming in. McKay Madsen's also in there, the 4-star running back, linebacker from Clovis, California.
Fresno.
They're expecting big things from him. Ryder Lyons, Harris. There's some really big return missionaries coming back. So you pair it up with that group, the true freshmen that or the high school recruits that just committed this cycle. It's near the finish line.
Those guys will be on the team in December?
Yeah, a lot of those return missionaries will be joining in January. I think they're getting
I said December.
They're getting a little more strategic too with that. I mean, just kind of having those conversations of when are you going on your mission. Obviously, it's personal choice. They're going to choose, but in a perfect world, they're there for that winter semester, and they're getting ready to roll for that spring football. And next year, too, it actually won't be spring ball. It'll be off-season activities. So from January to May, you're having those different practices if, in fact, that gets approved.
Uh-huh.
So they're hoping to get, most of their guys ready for January. And again, just from a timing perspective, it makes it harder for just that high school senior to really catapult. I think of like a Lecky Fotu back in the day where he just took off at Harriman. I remember BYU and Utah were in a battle in USC. You just don't see that as much anymore because of the portal and now these 5-and-5 guys where you're going to keep an Uluwave. You're going to keep a Raider Damuni. You're going to keep Walker Lyons and Saliapaga. Give them extra time because they're proven commodities in your program already. You're not going to take the flyer and give a roster spot and rev share money to a high school or true freshman. You want to give it to the proven commodity guys.
December coming up, December 11th, I think it is. I bought tickets to the Sphere to see my favorite band of all time, and that's the Eagles. Right? And you're wondering, where is PK going with this? Well, stay with me here. So I bought the tickets. They keep saying that they're done, and that would be they play like 58 shows at the Sphere, and that was supposed to be it. Well, now they got 8 more shows, right? It's like, I got to go. They're gonna stop at some point. They're gonna die at some point. So I buy tickets, right? Take out a small loan, and I'm telling Lloyd, our program director, what about the Big 12 title game at the Cowboy Stadium? I said, relax. I said, that's the week after. It is the first Friday in December.
Yep.
Will I be in the state of Texas? Now, I got 2 options. You only got 1. I got 2. Will I be in the state of Texas the first Friday in December?
You will.
Oh, there it is.
BYU, I think, is going to go 11-1 this year.
11-1. Ho, ho, ho.
I think this is their best team. I think that they're gonna deliver. Usually, I'm very skeptical of that because when the high expectations come, I think all of Cougar fans, they look at it and go, when's the fall coming? When's the fall coming?
Kansas?
Look at basketball. Final Four with the Lone Pig 3 with AJ. Can't even get out of the round of 64. Can't even get to the tournament in some cases. But I do think this team, even though there's high expectations, I get the sense still that there's a little bit of that cliche chip on the shoulder still, because really they haven't won anything yet. I mean, yes, they've won a lot of games and they've
best record in the Big 12 the last 2 years,
but they still haven't won a title. They haven't been to the playoff, and the nation still thinks you've hit your ceiling as a program. You're not going to do anything more, and still everyone's pointing to Texas Tech, and I still point to Texas Tech too. I think they're going to be dang good, even with that Will Hammond. But I think BYU is going to be in that game on that Friday night in Arlington in December. So I think you're going to be there in Texas as well.
All right, there it is. That is Mitch Harper, our KSL Sports Insider. You can read all of his material at KSL.com, and he also does the podcast, Cougar Tracks. He's got you covered. Believe me, nobody covers it better. Stay with us. We are going to talk Utah next. We're going to give equal time, just like we should, with the Utes coming up next, right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. All right, thanks for joining us. Right now, we are going to talk some Utah football. It's not just all BYU here, because I bleed red. Absolutely, I bleed red. You can't argue. PK bleeds red. That's a fact. I'm speaking
Have we tested
factual.
this theory on air?
It's a fact. I bleed red. Cut me, Mick. I bleed red. Joining us now is our Utah Insider. You can read all of his stuff, all of his material, all the stuff he puts on his social media and at KSLSports.com. His name is Steve Bartle. Steve, good morning. Thanks for coming in. It is football time, and I know outside of your cute little family that I saw the other night, you live for this.
Oh, man, I'm so excited. Fall camp just a few days away. We're, 6 days from the first practice of fall camp under Morgan Scally. Pretty exciting stuff.
Now, Utah, man, my gosh, you could set your watch by it every day. For the last 2 decades, we knew what it was going to be. It was a model of consistency. Kyle Whittingham, we all know what he's about, man, and he'll bring that stuff to Michigan, and away they go. But it's a new day at the U of U, so just your assessment of just the newness of it all. Now, it's not entirely new because you've got the ultimate Utah guy in Morgan Scally, obviously, and he's been in the program, but he brings in some new guys, new coaching staff. For a program that has no change for 20 years, all of a sudden they get it all at once.
Yeah, it's kind of a unique situation with Morgan Scally stepping up because it is a big change going from Kyle Whittingham to Morgan Scally. First-year head coach, right? That's a new element that the program hasn't had to worry about for
long time.
But still the familiarity with who Morgan Scally is, the fact he's been with the program since the mid-2000s as a coach, late 2000s, I guess, as a coach. There's still that feeling of it's the same old, right? That Utah football is just going to continue being what it's always been. And yet, from the moment Morgan Scally coached in the Las Vegas Bowl to his introductory press conference to what we saw in spring ball, there is a little bit of a different mode of operation.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to get your assessment on.
Yeah.
What have you noticed as far as any level of difference?
Yeah, going back to that bowl game, right? The on-field stuff first. That was our first exposure to Scally as a head coach. I thought the offense was a little bit more aggressive. And obviously in a bowl game.
Awesome.
Yeah, in a bowl game, you're going to let loose a little bit and chuck the ball around, and that's what Utah did a little bit more. They took more vertical shots and capitalized on those opportunities. Then continuing into spring ball, I'll tell you, we had more access in spring than we've had under Kyle Whittingham in a long, it was a significant adjustment for us where we got to be up there multiple times a week watching full practices, not just 20 or 30-minute sessions. We got to watch entire sessions. And so it was that was new, and we continued to watch a lot of throw game. It wasn't as much run game stuff, and part of that too is just with it being spring ball. You're probably going to work on that. You're not going to go through the rigors of the run game stuff. But I do think everything that Morgan Scally has said, where they want to maintain the physical, identity that they've built over the years, while also embracing the quarterback position and the passing game a little bit more. I think up to this point, everything we've seen so far suggests that they are going to kind of embrace that quarterback role. It was, at Big 12 Media Days, Pete Thamel had a little spot on Sports Center while they were talking about Utah, and that was the thing that they talked about, was the quarterback spot, that they haven't had somebody drafted, a quarterback drafted since Alex Smith, right? And that's going to be a major priority for Morgan moving forward, is that quarterback position specifically.
Yeah, that really is something when you think about it. And obviously Huntley has played in the NFL, so he made it. I don't understand why he wasn't drafted, but nevertheless, he did make it, and he was outstanding his senior year. There's no question about that. But you look at a program that has had that much success that hasn't had a quarterback stick, only one since Alex, even with all the success, it sort of blows your mind a little bit.
It really does. And obviously you can dive into the context of the situations, Travis Wilson going through the multiple coordinators. Yeah. Jordan Wynn with the injuries, right? There's been context to it all, but it is shocking that you go 2 decades now without a quarterback drafted, especially given the success that they've had, recently even. And with the quarterbacks that have come through the program, Tyler Huntley obviously taking that massive step from 2018 to 2019, where he came from out of nowhere and had a Heisman campaign middle of the season opening up with his play. COVID struck, and that sort of hindered his draft prospects a little bit. But, Utah's found good players to play that role over the last few years. And I think with what they've got in Devin Dampier and Bird Ficklin, they feel like they've got a pretty good shot of getting one of those two guys drafted over the next couple of years.
Anything else as far as Scally? Because he is different, and he's I think system-wide, schematically, from the defensive perspective, we'll see what we've seen. But I'm just wondering, personality-wise, his imprint will be different because he's a different human being. He's just not the same guy. I'm just wondering if you've seen anything that we might be able to anticipate that way.
Yeah, a much more engaged and energetic operation in terms of just how he interacts with players, with boosters, with fans. There was yesterday, Albert Gamboa. If you're a Utah fan, you know who I'm talking about, but he's usually at every single game, home or on the road, wearing the big football hat, right? And he's had the opportunity. Morgan Scally showed up to his house yesterday or over the weekend just to mingle with one of the diehard Utah fans. And, that went out across social media, Instagram, Twitter, that Morgan Scally went out and visited Albert. And, I can't recall Kyle Whittingham going to a random fan's house and spending a day with them, just mingling, right? And then Mark Harlan shared this in his media availability at Big 12 Media Days is, obviously with the environment that we're in now in college athletics, where it's all about money, right? And generating revenue opportunities, sponsorship deals, NIL opportunities for players. Morgan Scally hasn't just been involved in those meetings. He's been the one that's been pushing for them and, volunteering himself to go to these meetings and meet with these people and try to, generate greater interest. And I think that, above all else, is what Utah needed moving forward. Obviously with Kyle Whittingham, he's a legend. He's an established figure in college football. But with where this game is headed, having Morgan Scally in place, given these new requirements where you have to operate more as a CEO off the field than just being a head coach, I think Utah really has the right guy in place to help them in that aspect.
Yeah, and that's important. Kenny Gillihan has been doing that down in Tempe.
Yes,
I've been following that, and you got to do it. You can't just say, "Oh, well, that's unbecoming." No, it's reality, and it must be done. All right, you brought up the quarterbacks. I believe if Dampier stays healthy and if he plays like he did against Nebraska, wow, look out! That is a conference MVP caliber player right there.
I agree. I think, he proved last year that he can handle the speed, the physicality of the Big 12. Obviously, operating behind that offensive line certainly helped in how he was able to adjust. Now it's going to be on him to kind of grab the cape that he had at New Mexico, where he was the playmaker. He had to create a lot of things. He had to overcome, offensive line deficiencies. He's going to have to do a little bit more of that. And so, this season is going to be about how much Dampier can marry the efficiency and sound decision-making he developed last year with that, playmaking and an individual creation that he showcased at New Mexico. That's going to be the key for him this season. And given what Coach McGiven has brought in terms of his offense, and with Ryan Gunderson, a quarterback coach who spent time at UCLA and Oregon State developing quarterbacks, they've talked about developing Dampier as a more well-rounded pre-snap and post-snap decision maker. And I think that is going to be the big thing for him for his development this year, is making sound decisions and reads pre-snap and making those quick decisions, getting the ball out quickly and to the right guy. That's going to be the key for him in unlocking his potential as a potential MVP candidate, first team all conference type of guy. He's definitely in that conversation with the top four of Drew Mastemaker, Noah Fafita, Connor Wegman, Bear Bachmeier. Those guys, that's the top of the conference. And Dampier, given what they've added around him in that wide receiver room specifically, I think there's definitely a lot of room for him to emerge as that type of player.
I think they got a 1,000-yard rusher in Wayshawn Parker, and in talking to him at Media Day, I think he's out to prove that he's got the talent. It wasn't all the offensive line.
Yeah, I was watching film, over the weekend, and Wayshawn Parker, I was actually surprised at how often he had to create at the line of scrimmage. Given that offensive line and how we've come to talk about that group, and it was fantastic, right? Super elite in pass protection and run blocking. But Wayshawn had to create, around the line of scrimmage quite a bit. And not every single carry was that way, but, he has that ability to, navigate traffic around the line of scrimmage. And he's going to have to do a lot more of that this season. But the key here for Wayshawn and his ability to get to 1,000 yards is, one, the carry share. How many carries is he going to get? But Devin Dampier and Bird Ficklin, being the threats that they are, is going to force defenses to remain balanced. They have to respect the threat of Dampier and Bird on those option reads, and that's going to help Wayshawn as he tries to get to 1,000 yards. But he definitely has that ability, right? He has that sneaky, home run athleticism where it doesn't look like he's a burner, but he's still pulling away from guys once he gets.
Guy.
Yeah, he's
reminds me of you
a little bit. A little bit. He's got it's not a full on gut, but there's there's a little.
He's sturdy.
Yeah. So he is a talented player, and I think, as you mentioned, his mentality is going to be key to him this season, and wanting to get to 1,000 yards, wanting to do all that he can to help Utah get these wins.
Now, Steve Bartle, our KSL Sports Insider for the Utes, you've heard this. We talked about the receivers for so many years, and they've got some new guys, and they got some guys that showed a little bit last year, and maybe they're ready to take a next step. But then you got oh my gosh, here we go again, and you know about this. There's a lot of skepticism with that receiver group. Why do you think that this could be different?
Yeah, last year Utah did a lot with what they had in Ryan Davis, Dallin Bentley, Larry Simmons. Things didn't click with others, but they still had players emerge over the course of the season. And this year for me, when I look at Braden Pagan's numbers, 920 yards,
Coming
2
down
drops,
from Logan.
Caught it in traffic, in contested situations at a really high rate. I think he was a 55% completion rate in contested situations, which is great for him. His ability, his threat, getting vertical, getting into the intermediate, is going to do a lot for the passing game. I think Utah's passing attack last year was just limited because, Ryan Davis was great working the intermediate and short areas of the field. Dallin Bentley, another intermediate and short area of the field type of target. It was a low ceiling, right? And this year with Braden Pagan coming in, Kyrie Scholes, these are guys that add some vertical stretch that are going to create opportunities like Larry Simmons, who had to operate specifically, almost exclusively, as the deep threat guy, him and J.J. Buchanan, because you had Dallin and Ryan, operating underneath. And so having that ability outside with Pagan, with Scholes coming in, it's going to create a little bit more flexibility in terms of who they can use in the intermediate and short areas of the field, which is going to open things up. So I think given the fact that you have a wide receiver one like Pagan, who has the proven production at Utah State, obviously it's got to translate, but the fact that he's coming with McGivern from Utah State, I think is a big advantage for him. And his presence will do a lot to help everybody else kind of find their role and kind of give McGivern some flexibility in maximizing their opportunities and how they utilize these guys.
All right, that's Steve Bartle. We will continue more with our discussion about Utah football. Stay with us right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
3, 2, 1. This is Scotty G and Coach Tim LeCombe.
SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey, as he kicked off and the SEC kicked off their football media day, said that he is not happy whatsoever with what's going on in terms of the Protect College Sports Act. He has had conversations. The conversations about them tearing away from the rest of college athletics is real.
College football, it's ironic that they're against the Save College Football Act. They don't want to be governed. I mean, that's what I keep hearing. The SEC, the Big Ten, they're the ones that keep dragging their feet. Everybody else wants to get this done, but because they feel like they are better than everybody else, they should get a better deal.
I really can't stand this guy. I really, there are certain people out there that are just hell-bent on wrecking things that don't need to be wrecked.
Catch Scotty G and Coach weekdays from 10 to 2. Presented by Mountain Land Supply on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Slacker Radio headlines are brought to you by Trajan Wealth. Call Trajan Wealth today, your local trusted financial fiduciary. Call them at 1-855-TRAJAN1 or visit their website at TrajanWealth.com. The headline today is football, and more college football. Joining us is Steve Bartle. He covers the Utes for KSLSports.com. We talked a little bit about the offense. Let's flip to the other side of the ball. We talked about, with change for Utah. I think this year I might have, I don't know if necessarily question marks is the right phrase, but intrigue maybe. Some newer guys who've been in the program, waiting their time, and now their time is here to see what they can do. So let's just start at all three. Up front, a kid like Carson Kafusi, a Cash Dillon. These guys have been in the program, but they got to step it up now.
Yeah, those are two guys that I think Utah is going to be counting on to step up. Carson Kafusi was a true freshman last year as a defensive tackle. Cash Dillon is going into his third year this year. Those are two players that have stepped up in different ways. I think Carson has really kind of taken grasp of the leadership role, being a vocal leader in that defensive tackle room and kind of, grabbing on. So that defensive tackle spot up at Utah, it's a prideful position group.
Sure, a lot of history.
A lot of history there. And I think Carson has really kind of latched on to that element and really tried to lead with that in mind. And again, this is a credit to our opportunity to see him up close in practice during spring, just the way that he was talking and getting after guys and going through reps. You could tell that he's carrying a different confidence about him and really embracing that leadership role. And with Cash, he is he's viewed as the guy opposite of Lance Holsclaw, who we've had the opportunity now to talk to him a couple times this offseason. He's had quite the offseason, and it's been really fun to kind of follow along with what he's been involved with going up to, Capitol Hill and being involved in those conversations. But with Cash Dillon, he is a physical presence, on that edge. And I think it's going to look obviously different going from John Henry Daly and Logan Fano, who were, had great first steps. They were guys that wanted to get pressure on the pocket, get pressure on the quarterback, get into the backfield and make tackles for loss. Maybe it's a little different this year with Cash Dillon and Ethan Day and Lance Holsclaw, where it's more about being physical up front and controlling the line of scrimmage, where you're limiting, rushing lanes and that. And I think Cash is really, he's got the body, the frame to play that kind of role. How much has he developed as a pass rusher? I think that's going to be the key for him, especially operating opposite of Holsclaw.
Linebacker, what's going on in that position? You had some graduation, obviously, there. Jonathan Hall, still there, looking like he's ready to be the next, I don't know if I want to call star just yet. I want to see some more, but certainly the next playmaker. But just speak to that position and the other guys involved.
Yeah, the linebacker position has been headlined by a couple of guys. Lander Barton, Levani Demoody when he transferred in from Stanford. Yeah. And Jonathan Hall has just quietly sort of assumed more and more opportunity, more and more responsibility. And last year, he was the top producer on the defensive side of the ball. Led the team in tackles, was number 4 or 5 in pressures as a linebacker, getting more than Lander, who, that's how he operated, was kind of that stud backer, blitzing off the edge and those type of opportunities. He made plays in coverage and really was a sound tackler. I think he had the second or third lowest missed tackle rate. So, there are a lot of encouraging signs when you're looking at what Hall was able to do last year. This year, it's going to be on him to lead the way, not just in that linebacker room, but as on the defensive unit as an entire unit. He's going to be that guy. And Morgan Scalley has talked about it over the years that, when you have players that are switching positions, and Hall switched from safety to linebacker a few years ago, it usually takes them 2 to 3 years to get comfortable. And in that third year, that's when it all has to come together, not just in terms of your understanding of the position and what you have to do, but everybody else is looking at you to be that guy. And I think that's going to be the key for Hall, is embracing that role, and just in the way that he's conducted himself this offseason, going back to spring ball and our interviews with him, media days, and how engaged he was with us, the media members. I think there are encouraging signs there, but they're going to need others to step up around him. Trey Reynolds has been another that's been in the program a few years. Yep. Cyrus Polu is a second-year player. He's a true freshman last year that I have really high expectations for. Mm-hmm. I expect him to kind of emerge as a playmaker as the season goes on. And then you're going to see other guys, Elijah Ellis, who another Ellis in that family tree. He's going to be a linebacker in that rotation. And so they're going to need others to step up around them. They're going to have to solidify the depth beyond that top 3 or 4. That's going to be really important for that linebacker group. But in terms of what they have in Jonathan Hall, I think there's a lot of confidence in what sort of step he can take forward this season.
Defensive backfield, you got some familiar names, Evans, Ritchie, Benny, losing Smith to go with Kyle over there to Michigan. I think it was a blow. Mm-hmm. But it happens, you got to roll with it. No sense worrying about it. So they got some names. What do you expect there, and maybe some newer faces?
Yeah, I think if you're Utah, right, and you're looking at that group, losing Smith Snowden, a talent like that, an athlete like him, that's definitely tough. But you had Scooby Davis emerge as a playmaker on the outside. I think he led the team, or he was second or third behind Jackson Benny, who led the team in interceptions. Scooby had a couple of pick sixes, one against Baylor and another against Kansas. So you feel good about bringing him back to man one of those outside spots. And I think what they learned last year was, bringing in Blake Cotton, who was a senior transfer from UC Davis, a lower level. It took him a couple weeks to kind of settle in. But right around that West Virginia game, he settled into that starting role and really became arguably the most disruptive in terms of what he was able to limit completion percentage-wise among the 3 cornerbacks, Scooby, Smith, and Blake. And I feel like there's optimism in who they brought in from the transfer portal to kind of replicate that same formula this year. So they brought in a couple guys, James Bobo Chenault, his nickname's Bobo, and he's going to be in that mix for one of those outside starting spots. And then another player is Elijah Reed, who they actually recruited a few years ago coming out of high school. He was a late bloomer, ultimately ended up signing with Kentucky. He transferred to Akron last year and really emerged as a solid starter at Akron. Transfers here to Utah, and he's going to be, I think it's going to be one of those two, Chenault or Reed, as the starting cornerback. But then, looking at those safeties, bringing Benny back, and as well as Evans and Richie, that's a big-time luxury. There's a lot of depth in that safety position, a lot of versatility with Benny. You can potentially get really creative with that group and how you can deploy them. And another name to remember here is Rock Caldwell.
I got him on my list.
Yeah. 6'3", 195 pounds. He's operating in the nickel. So he's got experience operating on the outside as a corner, also as a safety, and that sort of versatility. We heard it before spring ball and just kind of had those questions like, is he a 6'3" nickel? Is that real? And then seeing him operate in that role throughout spring, it looked really, really interesting. It added a lot of size compared to what we've seen in that spot, in years past, and really just led to a lot of disruption in the passing game. So they've got a lot of flexibility with what they can do with some of the guys that they have in that secondary. But I think they feel really confident that they're going to be able to continue their brand of ball in that secondary.
How many years with the pick six now?
Oh, 19?
19?
19, I think.
If I'm betting, I see no reason why not to bet 20.
Man, I hear you. I hear you. They've got some dudes. They've obviously with Scooby coming back, Jackson Benny. Those are the two guys that had pick sixes. John O'Hall almost had one last year as well.
Did Barton have one?
Barton had one the year before.
The year before, okay.
Yep, the year before against Iowa State. It took him a while to get to the other end of the field, but he was pretty gassed. But he got there. So yeah, that was the one that actually extended. That was late in the year where it was like, are they going to get it? And Lander came through against that Iowa State game. I think that was like the second to last game of the season.
Yeah, okay. I couldn't remember which year, but I know, and I remember the run and all that stuff. But I'm definitely expecting them because on the defensive side, I mean, I know that they brought in a new coach because they made the change with Swan moving up and all, but you still got Sharif there. It just seems like they get a lot of continuity on that side of the ball offensively because of Kyle taking most. I think Atawaya was the only returner as far as a coach there. Defensively, maybe some newer names, which is exciting to see some newer guys to see how they can develop. But I feel confident in the staff being able to develop those guys. But they back end, and then obviously Powell took off on the front end.
Yeah.
But from that perspective, Shaw gives me a lot of level of comfort. Here's a man who played the position, obviously at the school, and is a great talker, a great communicator, always fun to talk to.
Yeah.
And knows his stuff on how to teach what they're looking for. And it seems like I've covered a lot of coaches over the years. I don't know that I could say anybody has had a tighter relationship with his players than Sharif Shaw.
He is a special human being. When you get the opportunity to just sit down and talk with him, he is one of those guys that you're just drawn to him because of how personable he is, how charismatic he can be. You
see why he was a lawyer in the courtroom.
Yeah. Yeah. And that obviously translates to his relationship with his players.
Yeah.
And, for Morgan, naming him the associate head coach, I think was, valuable in so many ways because Shaw is the person that can keep Scally, right? Like that checks and balance type of relationship, right? And I feel like that's valuable. Holding on to Mark Atawaya and naming him the assistant head coach, I think is a nod to him and what he did his first year here last year. What Scally's also done, bringing in Chad Bumpus, who spent a couple years here prior, during those Rose Bowl seasons, those Pac-12 championship seasons, there's familiarity there as well. And then obviously with Jordan Gross, Scally and him were teammates all the way back when. So there's familiarity there. And two, with the players in that room, Gross has been around the program so much that the players have known him. They've developed a relationship with him, and that sort of helped Utah in hanging on to them as Harding left for Michigan. And, defensively, Scally was able to hold on to more of that side of the ball with Shaw and Swan and Coach Ellis, bringing in Derek Odom, a former Utah player.
Sure.
I think Scally was coached under him or coached beside him. I can't remember specifically. And then Inoke Brechterfield. So it's an interesting staff, but there's still a lot of continuity, familiarity with one another. And I think the fact that he's honored, Shaw and Atuaya, and those two personalities that they have in those roles, I think is sort of indicative of just kind of the overall vibe that Scally is trying to create with his staff.
Oh, I think that's a fact, yeah.
Those two are, they're energetic, they're loud, they're emotional, they're really good with their players, and I think that is something that Scally is really trying to grasp a hold of.
And I think, too, not that Kyle cast a negative long shadow, but he cast a shadow.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to show we can do this, too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is that buy-in. And, given the opportunity this year with what they're bringing back on the field with, Dampier and Bird and Wayshawn, some of the players that they've brought in through the transfer portal, they feel like they've got a pretty competitive squad, and they can do exactly that, to say, hey, we can do this too.
Yeah. All right, one more segment with Steve. Stay with us. We will get to that next right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. We're talking Utah football right now. Steve Bartle, a KSL Sports Insider, joining us. Steve, if I ask you, and I will ask you, how many first-team all-conference performers do you think that is on this team, offensively, defensively, whatever it might be?
Yeah, that's a great question, PK. There's a lot of good players in the Big 12 this year. And like we were talking about to start with Devin Dampier, I think he's somebody that can certainly put his name on that first team ballot. His partner in the backfield, Wayshawn Parker, he has that sort of potential this year. But again, there are so many good quarterbacks in this league, so many good running backs, probably even more good running backs this year. So it'll say a lot if those two get those nods. Braden Pagan, wide receiver, I think he's somebody that can put himself on that list. And if he does, it's probably because Dampier is also on that list.
Yeah, good point.
I don't know that Utah has somebody on that offensive line that can break through this year, given what's in the league this year at offensive line. Texas Tech has a great line. Cincinnati, BYU, those three programs lead the league in offensive linemen this year, where Utah was leading that race last year.
Yeah, no question about that.
Defensively, Jonathan Hall, I think, will have a case. Jackson Benny, I think he has he's got his name out there enough where
he's coming from a good starting point.
Yep. And just like there are a lot of good defensive backs in this league as well. Putting that all-conference, that preseason vote for all-conference team was really tough. You have to leave off really good players throughout the league.
I think Davis might have a shot.
Scooby, I think if he has another year like he did last year, building on it, where he gets a couple interceptions, maybe takes one back, gets those PBUs, he'll be in that conversation, but he's going to have to really improve kind of how sound he is. Jackson Benny, I think, is the best option in that secondary to kind of emerge as that first conference all-guy. So I think you're looking at probably 5-6 guys first team. I think you'll have more potentially second and third team. I wish the Big 12 would give us an opportunity to vote on second team. That would allow a lot of the local beat writers to kind of shine a light on the teams that they cover, that they're around, right?
Yeah.
With how they have it structured, you only get to vote on one team. And if you're not doing your job, it's just, the default answer is who's the best players. It just doesn't allow us to shine a light on the local guys that we cover on our beat. So I would love to see the Big 12 give us the opportunity to vote first team and second team, all conference preseason. That way we get more of these players opportunities.
Okay, I'll call your mark today.
Yeah, please. Please do.
Football and college sports, it's never ending with recruiting, and you got this season, but you're preparing at the same time for down the road. And I know you guys, you and Mitch Harper, who does it for BYU, you guys are experts at this. Just give us an update as far as where they are recruiting.
Yeah, Utah, really did a lot of work in the month of June. And
seemed like they were getting commitments almost every day.
It was, we got to those final couple weeks of the month, and it was like a couple per day almost.
Right.
And so Scally definitely got it going in that month. I think they finished right around 20 commits. which is significant because they entered the month with only 3 on the commit list. So, they really did a good job of hitting some pipeline states. Obviously, the focus was here within the state. I think they landed 7 or 8 players from within the state: Diesel Dart, Ian Aloisio, Fui Vakapuna, Jackson West out of Corner Canyon as well. He's somebody that I'm really high on. I think he'll see, if he gets more opportunity on that defensive line, I think he's going to be somebody that we see, when it comes December and these recruiting ratings start to get those bumps. He'll be one of those guys. They hit the state of Texas and the states of Arizona and a couple other states as well, but really hit the pipeline states, but focused on the talent within the state. And I think that's big for Scally because his message has been, he feels like he can create a championship contender primarily due to the talent within the state. And we've seen it over the years. The talent has grown, not only on the top end, but the depth of talent in the state of Utah has just grown exponentially. So to build your foundation, his first year as the head coach with such a heavy focus on in-state talent, I think is just going to help them moving forward beyond this year. But they got a lot of good players, and with signing day, the early signing period not coming until December, a lot of work to do still on adding some pieces to the class, also defending and keeping other programs away and keeping guys committed. Long ways to go, but they feel pretty good about what they've done so far.
If I were to do a poll right now, I think to me is top 3. I go Tech, BYU, Utah, my top 3, and probably in that order. But that would mean that the Utes are right there. What do you think as far as the top 3? Are there, or is there enough separation that it looks like when we get to December and everything is said and done, when we have the 2 teams playing at the Cowboy Stadium, that'll be 2 of those 3?
Yeah, I think I share the same top 3. I think it's Tech, I think it's BYU, and I think it's Utah. Obviously, with Utah, they have a lot of questions, more so than the other programs. Right. But with Tech, they have the biggest question at that quarterback position, right? Does it click with why am I blanking on his name? Will Hammond, right? BYU, they've got questions with the wide receiver position. What if LG Martin struggles with injuries this year and that running back depth? They have a lot of answers, right? They bring back a significant portion of their defense. Utah, obviously, with the continuity that they have with Dampier and Morgan in that, but they have a lot of spots to fill. So when I look at those top 3, I look beyond them and look at Houston, Arizona, and Kansas State as 3 programs who, Arizona they bring back really important pieces, but they've got a tough schedule. Houston, they bring back a lot of good pieces and really kind of emphasize the line of scrimmage, which is key. They have a pretty manageable schedule. Obviously, starts week 3 with Texas Tech. They come to Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
That's going to define their season.
Right.
And then Kansas State is kind of a wild card for me. Colin Klein, obviously, first year. But you look at that schedule, it's so manageable for them. They were in a lot of tight games last year, lost a lot of one-score games.
Right.
Many of which came down to the fourth quarter, the final minutes, like the Utah-Kansas State game last year.
Yeah.
I think they have an opportunity to kind of be that team that we see go from the bottom and kind of flip the story that following year. So I have those 3 that I think can challenge those top 3.
Yeah, you speak of, and that's what's so cool about this conference, is that what do you do in these one-score games? Now, you look at Houston, man, they just about everything went their way with those one-score games. And can it be repeated? Can it be replicated? It seems like it's hard to be able to do that. And maybe Houston can do that. I'm not saying that they can't, but you just wonder their level of the ball bounce their way, whatever it might be in that particular season. And so I know like 2 years ago, the Devils, man, they were winning close games every freaking week.
Right.
And I know they had some injuries last year, and 6-3 is okay, but they weren't able to reproduce as good as they were because close games make me wonder, which as a fan and as a media member, I like. Yeah. Because that means, wow, it's exciting, and there's so many games that could go either way. But I do think those 3 teams I'm comfortable with. The other teams, I buy your reasoning. We'll see, particularly Arizona, because I think Fafita, I think he's the best passer in the conference. If he were 6'2", he wouldn't be at Arizona.
No.
He'd be in the NFL.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. He's that type of player. And with Arizona State, that schedule, all of your tough games are on the road, right?
I know. Right.
Texas A&M,
it's not conducive.
Tech, BYU, Arizona, they're all on the road. And that's kind of the difference between Arizona State and Utah is that all their tough games are at home.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that could make a difference. And
almost all of their tough games.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. All right, that's Steve Bartle. That is our Ute conversation. You can follow him the rest of the season at KSLSports.com and his social media, Twitter, and all that stuff. What's your handle and all that?
At Bartle, KSL Sports.
Yeah, very simple to remember. I've seen him out there. This guy, game day, is running around with his head cut off, trying to do everything on the field, over wherever the fans might be, what is happening, because we've had game day and Fox Big Noon, and I think game day, you drop about 7 pounds. That's just the sweat of you running all over the place.
Easily. Dude, I've dropped 15 pounds since media day.
These guys are hard workers. I got to give it to them. Both he and Mitch do a heck of a job. So there you go. All right. Thanks for listening. Stay with us. We got Scotty and the Coach coming up next right here on KSLSports.com.